Maverick News, the antivirus program for your mind. And now, the Freedom Reporters.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rick Walker. You're watching the Maverick News Channel. We are the Freedom Reporters.
And hello, this is your trusty co-host, Brenden Kennedy. It's great to be back. Good day, Rick. How are you?
I'm okay. And I hope you are even better than you were yesterday as you get over this bout with COVID.
Getting there. A little more fatigue, but it'll pass. Hopefully.
I'm sure it will. Lots to share with you tonight. MPP, member of provincial parliament in Ontario, independent because he was kicked out of the Conservative Party, surrendered to Ottawa police today and is facing charges related to his attendance at the Ottawa Freedom Rally with the truckers. So that's an interesting development. They asked him to come back to Ottawa and surrender himself, and that is what he has done. So we'll have a little bit about that. Also tonight, our special guest will be Rick Nicholls, the independent. Well, he's not independent anymore. He's the member of provincial parliament for the Ontario riding of Chatham-Kent-Leamington. And more interesting and more important is that he is now also the deputy leader of the Ontario Party and is the first sitting member of the Ontario Party in the Ontario legislature. So he's going to be joining us in just a few minutes. I think he's actually in the back room waiting to come in. So we're excited to have Rick join us again here on the program.
It's always a pleasure speaking with Rick. He's got a lot of insight and many years' experience as a MPP in Ontario, Canada. So he's got a lot of knowledge and that sort of thing.
And also, we have an update on the People's Convoy they're around Washington, D.C. They haven't actually gone in there. And a big twist to the whole story down there. They're leaving, but they're not done. And they'll be back. And they're going to California. So that's a major development. We'll have more on that. And without further ado, let's bring in our guest for the evening, Rick Nicholls.
Rick and Brenden, good to see you again, gentlemen. Thanks again for having me on your podcast.
Our privilege.
Hey.
Thank you for joining us, Rick.
Absolutely. You're looking pretty snazzy today. It's great.
Well, I'm in my Toronto office today right now, so I've been up here and challenging the Minister of Health on many different issues. And you know what? It'll be interesting once we get those videos out as people listen to what her response to me was, or shall I say, really wasn't.
Well, before we get into too much detail with a lot of the questions that we have specifically for you, I would like to get into this whole thing with Randy Hillier, just because it is sort of a breaking news story today. And I just want to, it is sort of the lead story of the day, I think, for us. So I just wanted to bring this up so that people can get up to date and then maybe even get you to comment on it, Rick, while you're here. So this was Randy Hillier giving himself up to police today in Ottawa. They asked him to come in and surrender, and he complied with that. And this was the scene outside Ottawa Police Headquarters this morning.
Anyway, today, going into the Ottawa Police, I've been asked to surrender, face charges for expressing myself at the Freedom Convoy. And I've been deemed that I have to prove that I'm not a danger to society to have my freedom. We'll see what happens.
So that is what happened with him. So he's facing apparently 9 different charges. Let me just, I just want to make sure I get the facts straight on this. I have to bring up my notes. One moment while I flip between my pages here.
Yeah, it's okay.
So, facing 9 charges related to the Freedom Convoy protest. He says he knows that all of the charges are related to his opposing views that he expressed very often around the Freedom Convoy. And police have confirmed that they did lay the charges. And they include 2 counts each of obstructing a police officer, counseling mischief, and mischief obstructing property over $5,000. He's also charged with obstructing a person aiding a peace officer, assaulting a peace or public officer, and counseling an uncommitted indictable offense. And I know that Randy said that all he ever did up there was shake hands and hug people. So there's a wide difference of view on that. And boy, I don't know. What do you make of all this, Rick? I'm really interested to get your view on this.
Well, I've known Randy for in excess of 10 years, and Randy is Randy. I did have some boots on the ground up in Ottawa. I personally wasn't there, although I did attend the rally in Windsor, and it was very, very peaceful. I went up and spoke to RCMP and OPP, and everything was fine. Now, that was on a Saturday, and then things got a little ugly on Sunday. But with regards to Randy, I know that our leader of the Ontario Party, Derek Sloan, was up there, and he had an opportunity to address the people that were there. I, to be honest with you, took offense to the inflammatory language that the PC government, the NDPs, and the Liberals chose to use with regards to the peaceful protest in Ottawa. They used terms like occupy. Well, they were there. Police directed them where to park and what to do. They say that businesses were closed down. They forced businesses to close. Well, anyone who I spoke with, they frequented the establishments in Ottawa on a very regular basis, would help them clean up. They took care of litter. They are very peaceful. Yes, they had bands, and that maybe sometimes, they were a little bit loud. Not all residents of Ottawa were happy with the fact that the protesters were there, but they were there for the people of Ottawa as well. So I really took offense to some of the inflammatory language that was used, and I actually created a member statement in support of our truckers up in Ottawa, the Convoy in Ottawa, as well as in Windsor. As for Randy, well, Randy's not shy. He will, in fact, speak his mind. But I noticed and saw a number of interviews with Randy, talking with people. He was very polite, very understanding. Not once did I ever see him be argumentative or aggressive with anyone. But the fact of the matter is, it's up to other people's interpretation. And I'll give you a personal story on that. For example, let's say I was having a conversation with one of my children. I think you can relate to this. And Brenden, you probably can relate to this too, but maybe on the other side. But so let's say I'm having a conversation with one of my kids, and at the end, they say, "You were yelling at me. You were yelling at me." And I said, "No, I wasn't yelling at you. I may have raised my voice a little bit to get a point across, but I was never yelling at you." But you see, that was their interpretation of what happened versus my interpretation of what happened. And I think with a lot of the people in Ottawa, hey, listen, welcome to the capital of Canada. Welcome to the House of Commons, Parliament buildings, where protests go on all the time. Were some people inconvenienced, perhaps for 2 weeks, because they couldn't do their routine, perhaps. But then you talk to other Ontarians or Ottawa people, and they say, we'd go down there and we would talk with the truckers. They were wonderful. The truckers were feeding the homeless. You know, they weren't doing damage to monuments. You know, those were other people that were there. I won't say who they were because I can't say with any authority. So with regards to Randy, I mean, I feel badly for him. Did Randy make a few comments and statements? Perhaps. He was banned from the Ontario Legislative Assembly. Unfortunately, I wasn't there when, in fact, the government House leader brought forth a motion without notice, seeking unanimous consent to ban Randy Hillier from the Ontario Legislative Assembly for comments that he allegedly made in Ottawa. And of course, I would have said no. All it would take is just one person to say no. And sadly, I wasn't there, and a few other of the independents weren't there at the time. And as a result, you know, Randy is banned until he comes back with an apology to the Legislative Assembly of Ontario. So that's sad for Randy, but I certainly hope that these charges, you know, the police have to do their due diligence, but I'm sure that they're gonna find it tough to perhaps find any sound, solid evidence to convict Randy. I know you mentioned the number of charges that were laid. Well, you know what? I still believe that a person is innocent until proven guilty.
Yes, and I have to agree with you on the inflammatory language that has been used to describe the protest. I find it disturbing when they're using words like siege, insurrection, occupation, illegal, violent. We ran countless hours of raw video of the protest right here on this program, much of it live and unedited, and that's not what we saw. And that's not what our people on the ground saw.
And I would add, you want to talk Occupy? You want to talk siege? You want to talk violence? Well, then look at Russia and Ukraine. Those words are far more fitting to that situation where people's lives are actually being lost, and there's all kinds of property damage, and I mean, it could in fact result in maybe World War III. Who knows? I won't predict that, but hopefully cooler heads will prevail. But that language, that inflammatory language, I have no trouble using it in describing Russia and Ukraine. But for the trucker convoy to Ottawa and what they did and how they kept the streets clean and how they were helping people, those words do not fit at all. That's just people, certain MPPs on the Liberal side, and actually even on the PC side and NDP side, that are using inflammatory language for political points, and that's it. That's my view, and I found that to be very, very discouraging that they would actually continue to use that terminology. As a matter of fact, some of the terminology in Today in Question Period was used once again, and it had to deal with a couple of the MPPs from the Ottawa area. Well, guys, get over it. You know what? Nobody got hurt. There was no damage. People might have been inconvenienced for a little bit, but don't you dare use that inflammatory language to describe, because those convoys, those trucker convoys, were not there for just themselves and mandated vaccinations and so on and so forth. They were there for the country of Canada, for the freedoms of Canada, of Canadians whose freedoms were being taken away by, I'll use this word, tyrannical prime minister, who had no business, in my opinion, to act the way he did. And then suddenly, when it appeared that the Senate, thank goodness we have level heads, nonpartisan, well, usually nonpartisan senators who were about to defeat this emergency act that the prime minister had put forward. And he got wind of that. And so he canceled it before they could defeat it. That way, he saved some political face. But I'm going to tell you something. People saw right through that. They saw right through that, just like you see through a window. And he wasn't fooling anybody.
Well, that brings us to the Ontario Party. Derek Sloan and yourself. Randy Hillier has been one of the most vocal supporters of the truckers and the freedom movement, and spearheaded the No More Lockdowns campaign throughout the pandemic. And Derek Sloan, who is the leader of the Ontario Party, also has been a leading voice on that front. And then you emerged as a freedom fighter yourself.
I did.
Yeah, and why you've now joined the Ontario Party? So let's just get into that a little bit. How did you get connected with the Ontario Party, and why did you decide, after being ejected from the Conservative fold, why did you choose to join the Ontario Party?
Great question, Rick. And interestingly enough, when it first happened to me back on August 19th, and I'll always remember August 19th because that was the day I announced that I refused to get the COVID-19 vaccine and whatnot. And so I ended up just remaining as an independent with no allegiance to any party at that point in time. And I did that for about 3 months. Now, I had been courted by another one of those, supposedly conservative party, and having met with both the leaders, the husband and wife combination, I decided that no, that party and that type of leadership really wasn't what I would call true leadership. And look, I'm not going to do any bashing, but my point is, I was asked, why did I go with the Ontario Party? So again, it all started when I was asked to actually go on a podcast that was headed up by a gentleman by the name of Michael Thiessen. And I believe, I can't remember exactly his podcast, Liberty for, help me out, guys.
Not familiar with it.
Okay,
yeah,
fair
I'm
enough.
not familiar. I'm sorry.
That's fine. But he has an excellent podcast as well. And thank goodness for people like you and Brenden, Rick, and for guys like Michael. And I have been on podcasts across Canada and even into the United States. Wayne Allen Root, I've been on his podcast, actually his syndicated radio program, twice now. But my point is, I had turned down, the Carahalios for a number of reasons, mostly because of leadership and for what I knew of that particular individual. And then I was on a podcast with Michael Thiessen, and Mike liked what I had to say. He liked my style, and I was invited to a meeting whereby the Ontario Party were formulating and putting things together. And I knew some of the people on that advisory team, and I liked them. And I said, well, guys, have you done anything with regards to mission, vision, values? Well, yes, Rick, we're working on that and so on. I said, well, if you don't mind, allow me to spend the weekend working on mission, vision, values, for the party, and you take from it whatever you like. And so I submitted that the following week, and they kicked it around and said, Rick, we actually really like what a lot of the things that you have indicated with regards to, because my objective here was simply this. The Ontario Party is a true conservative party. We believe that Doug Ford has lost his moral compass. He has taken the PC Party of Ontario and moved them left of center. Right now, they're on a spending spree. giving money away. Well, gee, there must be an election coming up. I get that. But still, I really liked the members of the Ontario team. So what transpired was I was then asked to, in fact, endorse Derek Sloan as leader of the Ontario Party. And I thought it over and had asked a few questions here and there. And I said I'd be more than happy to endorse Derek as leader of the Ontario Party. And a lot of that was based on the character of the man, what he's gone through, and what he wants to do as leader of the Ontario Party. And then a few weeks later, I was asked if I would consider joining the Ontario Party. And without hesitation, I said, yes, I would. Now, that's what I thought. Well, I'm just joining the Ontario Party. I'm a member. But then it became obvious to me. Well, not obvious to me. It became obvious to me after they had raised the point. They said the Ontario Party have their very first sitting member of provincial parliament at the Ontario Legislative Assembly. And I went, oh, I guess I am. But that was, Brenden, that wasn't my motivation. That wasn't my motivation. My motivation was true, and transparent. And so anyway, I have now joined and I'm now a sitting member of the Ontario Party. And one of the things that really struck me, and I've been working on this and helping them develop, is we have what I call 6 foundational pillars from which we want to build our party, the Ontario Party, and we want to build Ontario. Now, do we have a chance at forming government? Realistically, no, we don't. We're a new party. We're a party that people haven't heard a lot about, but they will. But what I ask people to consider, so what part of these foundational pillars that you cannot agree with? And here they are. The first foundational principle is all about truth. Many times you hear people say those politicians are nothing but a bunch of liars, and say they say one thing, do something else, and so on. Well, that's not our party. That's not me. For over 10 and a half years, I've strived to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, as they say in court, so help you God. Now, I've never had to say that in court because I've never been to court. But truth is the first foundational pillar. The second foundational pillar is transparency. I talked earlier about when you look out a window is transparent. You want to be able to see what's on the other side of that glass. We want to be a party that is totally transparent with Ontarians. The third pillar, foundational pillar, is faith. And we realize that faith, the founding principles, back in 1867, when Canada first became a nation, was founded on Christian principles. Now, does that mean that you have to be a Christian in order to be a part of the Ontario Party? No. We recognize, we respect one's faith because I believe that faith can, in fact, provide guiding principles for one to lead their life in a successful manner. And I respect that. So I've talked about truth. I've talked about transparency. I've talked about faith. Well, the fourth foundational pillar in our party is called family. And of course, everything that we do from a legislative point of view, I believe, has to in some way, shape, or form affect the family. Now, there's been a lot of talk recently. Let's go back 4 years, Brenden. Let's go back 4 years. What was the main thing that Doug Ford ran on? Doug Ford ran on getting rid of the Kathleen Wynne sex education curriculum because they felt that it was inappropriate for some of the ages and so on. Well, what has Doug Ford done since then? 4 years later, what has he done with regards to that particular policy? Nothing. He has done nothing. They may say, well, we tweaked it here and there, but they've done nothing. We're about family, and we want to see the family unit be strong. Now, the family unit with these mandated, vaccines with lockdowns has really had a detrimental effect on the family unit. I'm sure you would agree, and it's had a lot of negative impact, even on the mental health of not only just children, but even the parents who had to stay home with the kids all the time too. I kind of jokingly said, tongue in cheek, now that the kids are going back to school, the mental health of children will improve, but the mental health of parents will drastically improve.
Yeah.
As a result.
Of course.
So we want to focus on family and what's involved with family values and family principles. And on that note, one of the things, remember, I just got through talking about the Kathleen Wynne sex education. One of the things that our party will do, if we were to form government, but this is for all families. If you're not happy with the current state of affairs, curriculum wise, with the public board or the Catholic board, we will provide vouchers for families to be able to decide, I want to homeschool, I want to send my children to a private school, I want to send my school to a school of faith, whatever their faith may be. Now, it costs the Ontario government approximately $12,500 a year for every student who goes to school. And that money goes directly to the school boards for them to do what they need to do. Well, what we're suggesting is that these voucher systems will in fact give parents that option of saying, I don't want to support either school boards. This is where I want my money to go, because it costs money. I mean, we homeschooled my daughter for 3 years, and we sent her to a Christian school for a year. And I'll tell you, I mean, it's not cheap to send a child to a school other than where your taxes go. And of course, think about this. A lot of the schools, the private schools, and I'll talk, for example, the Christian school, and let's talk Chatham. We get a Chatham Christian school. I'm not sure how many students they have there, but let's say they have 200 students. Okay, that's from kindergarten through to grade 12. It's a small school, and like any school of that size, they struggle, financially. But on the other hand, it's the quality of the education that the students are getting. Now, people will argue that, and that's fine, they can. But we want to give families that option of, if you're not happy with the current existing public boards, like Catholic and public boards, then you can send your child to wherever you want. So I've talked now about truth and transparency. I've talked about faith and family. Let's talk about freedom and freedoms. We know what that's all about. And Brenden, I'm sure that you would agree that as Ontarians, as Canadians, as Ontarians, that we have enjoyed, because we live in a peaceful country, at least it was.
Yeah, it was.
That we've enjoyed certain freedoms. You want to go to a restaurant, Rick? Guess what? You could go to a restaurant. You want to go to a show? You want to go work out at a gym? You just want to walk uptown? You want to jump in an airplane and go someplace warm, especially with today in Toronto, where it was like somewhere around -11. Very cold.
It's freezing.
Oh, golly. So those are freedoms.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? We have had taken away. And as the Ontario Party, we will eliminate those kinds of mandates because it's not fair. It's not just. Mandates even pertaining to vaccines. I just asked questions today with regards to Directive 6. And it's interesting how, I didn't get much of an answer from the Minister of Health. But then again, I wasn't expecting a lot, in terms of a response. But again, when you take a look at it, when we talk about Directive 6, Directive 6 did not mandate vaccines. Do you know who mandated vaccines? Employers. employers mandated that, and they violated Directive 6. They violated Directive 6. And as a result, they said you either vaccinate or you terminate, one or the other. And here we have, you know, we have people working who said COVID protocols were in place in my workplace before all of a sudden these so-called vaccines came out, which I believe Prime Minister Trudeau is getting a little graft off of every vaccine that is, because he has some interest in a company out in BC. I digress. The point is, now what we are saying is we will eliminate any of those types of vaccine mandates because people felt they were coerced. They had to, in fact, get the vaccine or be fired. And if I get fired, I lose my employment insurance benefits. It'll affect my pension, any severance that might be coming my way. The companies said, hey, this is great. You know, if we can get away with this, we are going to save, you know, millions of dollars down the road. And as a result, people felt coerced into getting the vaccine. And fellas, the three of us know of people who have suffered as a result of an adverse effect, you know, from the vaccines. These CEOs, CFOs, you know, company managers, whatever, they are not medical professionals. My medical professional is my doctor. And I listen to my doctor. Because my doctor knows from a health point of view what's best for me, as he knows what's best for Rick Walker and as he knows what's best for Brenden Kennedy. Not some CEO that all they're doing is looking at bottom line and saying, hey, how can we reduce our manpower? And of course, by doing that, not only in healthcare, I stood on a line across from Chatham-Kent Health Alliance. There must have been several hundred people there, either about to lose their jobs from the hospital or people in support of those people who were threatened to lose their jobs if they didn't get vaccinated. And I stood there and I talked. I remember talking to a nurse over 32 years experience that was going to be walked out the door with no severance. 32 plus years and no severance? Are you kidding me? Nothing at all. Too bad, so sad. You don't get the jab with this experimental drug, you're gone. So as the Ontario Party, you know, we will in fact stipulate that we are totally against those types of mandates that restrict, you know, the freedoms of people, restrict, you know, that people need to have informed consent when in fact these experimental drugs, they are being coerced. You either get the jab or get fired. And if something happens to you, too bad, so sad. Which takes me back to August 19, or just a few days before that, when in fact I had a discussion with an unelected official who basically said, you either get vaccinated or you're going to sit as an independent. I said, wait a minute. What about my side of the story? My side of the story is I don't believe that there is enough mid and long-term clinical trials done to determine adverse effects as a result of the vaccine. He said, I don't care. You either get it or you're gone. So sadly, a lot of people, they had to get the jab because they have mortgages to pay. They have, you know, families to provide for, you know, and so they were basically, you know, they were at the mercy of the employer. And then fingers crossed, nothing happened to them. And yet, you know, the other night I was at a function, had the opportunity of talking with about, I think it was, 2, 4, 5, 6, half a dozen people at this one particular table. And one of them said to me, I work in a long-term care home. I said, okay, so that was mandatory vaccination. She goes, yes. And sadly, She said she's had an adverse effect, as a result of her getting the vaccines. She showed me her arm. Her arm was inflamed and blistered because of her getting, I'm not sure whether maybe it was the third shot, but she's frightened because if I get that kind of adverse effect from the vaccines, something, excuse me, something in my system is not agreeing with whatever it is they're injecting me with. And so we will fight for people's freedoms and to restore the freedoms that people enjoy. So again, I've talked about truth, transparency, faith, family, freedoms, and the sixth foundational principle that our party, the Ontario Party, is all about is fiscal responsibility. Rick, Brenden, I kind of joke. I say, my last name is Nicholls, not Gold. So therefore, I view the coffers, of the Ontario, the people of Ontario, because that's where we get through taxes. That's where we get our money, right? Our government gets their money. I said, I guard it like it was my own. I guard it like it was my own. I don't want to go on spending thrifts. I ran my own training development business, as you both know, for 25 years before I got involved in politics. And I traveled literally across Canada and the United States, doing motivational speaking, teaching, training, seminars, you name the business category, and I probably was there. And it wasn't always in front of big, fancy, on stage, bright lights and so on. I even did training in dealership service departments, when I was doing work for some of the big three. Having said that, I guard the finances, and because I ran my own training company, I would say, is this a nice to have or a need to have? And if it was a nice to have, I'd say, I'm going to put that on the back burner. Anything that was a need to have, I went ahead and I would purchase it. Now, let me tie that in to I see a lot of waste in government, but I see a lot of waste in companies. How many of us know where departments have budgets and they will then look at their budget within maybe a couple of months to go and they'll go, what do we have in our budget right now? Do we have any money left over? Oh my goodness, look at all the money we have left over. We better spend it or what?
We'll lose it.
That's it, exactly, Brenden. We'll lose it. So maybe they don't need new furniture, new office furniture and so on. But you know what? Because that was budgeted, but they don't really need it, they'll go ahead and they'll buy it anyway. And to me, that's wasteful. And as the Ontario Party, we do not want to be wasting taxpayer money. Just plain and simple. So those are the six. Truth, transparency, faith, family, freedom, and fiscal responsibility. That's what we're going to build our Ontario Party on. And that's what if we were ever blessed to be able to form government, that's exactly how we would in fact build our province. We would rebuild our province because it's broken right now.
So you're actually the deputy leader now of the party, right?
Rick, yes, I am. Yes. I'm very excited about that too.
Right. I see a lot of people in the comments here asking if you voted for Bill 67.
Okay, well, let's go right back to that foundational pillar, the very first one, truth. The answer is, yeah, I did. And it was an unintentional mistake on my part. I have a saying that when you mess up, you fess up.
And we need to explain what Bill 67 is. Jordan Peterson has described it as, I think, the worst legislation ever proposed in Canadian history. It is supposed to be, I guess, an anti-racism bill.
Supposed to be.
But it really, It's not. It is not really about anti-racism. It's more about thought crimes, in my estimation.
And making jobs for people who spend a lot of
Bureaucrats.
time in human resources and that sort of thing.
Well, let me read you something out of Bill 67. And now and of course, just so that your listening audience understands, I sat down with members of our team and explained my side to it. And I said, you know what? I'm not making excuses. When I first sat down and read through the bill, first of all, if anybody's ever tried to read through a legislative bill, it is full of what I call legalese. On purpose. On purpose. So I want to read something to you. And this is called an act to amend various acts with respect to racial equity. Okay. And you go, well, okay, the word racial's in there. Well, okay, let me read this. So here it is here. Under subsection 1(1) of the Education Act, it's amended by adding the following definitions. I'm going to read it right from it because I have the bill in front of me. Anti-racism means the policy of opposing racism, including anti-indigenous, anti-black racism, anti-Asian racism, anti-Semitism, and Islamophobia. Oh, well, what about anti-white? What about anti-Christian? Oh, that's not mentioned in there. Critical race theory. Critical race theory. Then they go on to say, by definition, racism means the use of socially constructed ideas of race to justify or support, whether consciously or subconsciously, the notion that one's race is superior to another. Well, I was never raised that way. I was never raised that way. And I believe that all people in this case are equal in that sense. And so for this bill, mind you, I'm going to preface it by saying you have to understand the background of the NDP MPP who brought this forward. The lady works at Wilfrid Laurier University. She's in diversity, equity, those types of programs and so on. Excuse me. The point is that this particular bill, as I got into it deeper, because nowhere in the bill does it talk about critical race theory. Okay? And so when at first glance, you look at it, you go, well, okay. You know, in subsection 169.1 of the Act, it's amended by adding the following clause: address racism and promote racial equity, not equality, equity. And so basically what they're saying here as well is that if you're white, you're born white, you're a racist. And you must pay for the sins of your forefathers. And I'm saying, I will not apologize for the color of my skin because that's the way I was created. That's it. Plain and simple. So, you know what? I mean, and then they want to force teachers to go through all this special training and fine people and so on. This is a private member's bill. What is the success of a private member's bill ever becoming legislation? Probably 2, maybe 3%. And I certainly don't want this one. If this comes back up on the floor, here's what has to happen. All the PCs, all the members of the PC party, all the NDP, all the liberals, and myself voted in favor of the bill. Second reading. That's it. Second reading. Well, now what has to happen? They designated it, the author of the bill, she designated it for a particular committee, and I think it was social justice. Well, first of all, okay, it's slotted in there, But the government, it's the government that decides what bills get called into committee and what bills don't. They have to call that bill in committee, first of all. Secondly, then they go through and they'll invite people in to yay or nay, speak in favor or against the bill, and what these are the reasons why, and or I don't like this. This needs to be added. That needs to be taken out, and so there needs to be greater clarification. So they go through that. There's a process. It's not like they don't go through this like in an hour, and then they go through clause by clause, and then they get the bill to where they want it, where there's probably some amendments. Then, and only then, does that bill come out of committee. And then the government has to call that bill. And then that bill, it comes back into the Ontario legislature. That bill is then debated at third reading. Third reading. Up until now, it means nothing, although now it's come back, as some people would say, it's a better bill, or they might say it's an even worse bill now. So it's debated. You have to have so many hours of debate on the bill, and then it's voted on. And of course, if it passes, well, then it becomes law.
What type of time frame would that be looking at? That sounds to me like over a year at least.
Well, let me put it to you this way, Brenden. I had a bill, and it was a breed neutral bill. You hear a lot of things about pit bulls, the pitties, and the owners who are concerned about their loved pet.
Yeah.
And I had that bill. I introduced that bill back in November. I got to get this right now. Gee whiz. November 2019. There you go. November 2019. And that bill sat in what I call PMB purgatory, for over a year. I reached out to Premier Ford at the time. I reached out to the Attorney General, Doug Downey. I reached out to the Solicitor General, Sylvia Jones. I even reached out to our government House Leader, Paul Calandra at the time. I said, guys, we got to get this bill. We've got to get this bill changed, because it's not a good bill the way it is right now. The legislation is not good right now. Well, they dragged their feet. And then we know what happened over the summertime. And when we were supposed to go back the week after Labor Day of last year, the government prorogued. What does that mean? The government said, well, we're not going to go back when we said we're going to go back. We're going to wait for another, I think they waited for 3 weeks, roughly, before they went back. But here's the sad part. Any bill, my bill included, that had not gone, that was maybe just sitting, waiting for committee, had not been debated or completed debate, was completely wiped off the table and have to start afresh. Now, why do I mention that? Because this Bill 67 is a private member's bill. The only way, I think, and to your point, Brenden, see, I was November of 2019, and then it was like September of 2021, and my bill hadn't even been brought forward. They pick and choose. They pick winners and losers. That's how it works. And this bill has to be a loser. But I will be shocked, absolutely shocked, because even though you might say, well, it looks as though it's going to be a lot of time before this particular bill, is even called, here's what could happen. Towards the end of a session, and I don't want your listening audience to get paranoid about this, but it is a reality. Hopefully not a strong reality. But sometimes, towards the end of a session, the government House Leader, Paul Calandra, who's also the Minister now of Long-Term Care, will sit down with the House Leader of the NDP and say, look, we want to pass these particular bills, So they horse trade. Is what they do. You know, I'll give you these two bills for passage of these bills. And I've seen it in past where a private member's bill gets passed without any debate at all. And I said to them one time, why do you do that? Political reasons. Political reasons. This is the inside baseball, and a lot of people don't realize what goes on. And what happens is they might look at a particular riding that is held by the NDP. And the Doug Ford government, from the very get-go, from when they were first formed government, have said, our opposition is not the NDP, even though they are the only official opposition. Why? Because they have more than 12 seats in the legislature. The Liberals, even though they go by Liberals, they're still viewed as independents because they're not an official party.
So they did lose their party status in the last election, so that's still a thing for the time being.
Yeah. So again, now here we go back to the situation at hand, and it is quite possible that Calandra might try to work a deal, because they'll look at a particular riding, and in this particular riding, it happens to be Kitchener Centre. That's the riding where this member of provincial parliament is. And as I said earlier, the Doug Ford government doesn't view the NDP as a threat to government. Although the last election, we know it has.
I think I see them as a threat to democracy. I see them as a threat to Canada. They are very dangerous. This bill is representative of that as well, with how dangerous they are. There's some infamous players with this bill. I'm not sure if you remember who Lindsay Shepherd is, but some of the people who had a hand to play in the Lindsay Shepherd situation at Laurier University also had fingers in this bill as well. So that's something to keep an eye out for anyway.
So here's my point. She is Kitchener Centre. And let's say, for example, the government says, you know what? We don't want the Liberals to get that seat. We would love to take that seat, but if we don't have a chance of getting that seat, say the PCs, and we don't want the Liberals to get it, then maybe what we'll do is we'll pass this horrendous, ugly Bill 67, because then that would maybe strengthen that member's opportunity to be reelected as an NDP for Kitchener Centre. That's some of the inside baseball that goes on. So let's just hope and pray that doesn't happen.
How did it get by you when you voted for it in second reading?
Rick, I had read the bill, and like I said, I didn't see anything really, really wrong with it based on the way it was presented. Okay. As I said earlier, a lot of times they have they use a lot of legalese, but where they talk about racism and anti-racism, when they talk about equality versus equity, it's like, well, what's the definition of those and so on. I didn't see anything at that time, and be honest with you, a lot of times, we don't have a chance to really read every single bill and that comes our way. So I admit it got by me, it slipped by me, but I've certainly made amends since then. And at this point in time, it's at this point, it's no harm, no foul.
Well, it's the use of that word equity that is at the heart of the problem, largely, I think, with all the CRT ideology, the identity politics in this country and in the U.S., and even in the Western world. It's that use of the word equity that people don't really understand. I think they think it means equality, but it means equal outcome rather than equal opportunity. And because you're using the word equity, and because they're applying that across the spectrum through all aspects of legislation these days, hiring practices. They use equity everywhere now instead of the word equality.
Yeah.
So when you're trying to mandate equal outcomes, it means that some people, you have to take things away from some people and or adjust standards to make sure that people have access, and it opens a whole hornet's nest and a whole can of worms. It's
Exactly. And you know what I believe too, Rick? And this happens. This happens. A bill will come across, and it'll be the government house leader, maybe along with maybe a minister that might have input into that particular bill. In this case, they didn't have input into that particular bill, but they'll say, "This is how we're going to vote," and so you have to vote the party line. And yet, I look across the way, and based on what I've experienced and seen, I'll bet you that there's a number of my former PC colleagues who would say, "Rick, I had to vote this way, but maybe with a little more insight, a little more knowledge gained, I most definitely would have voted against it." But you see, it's kind of like the PCs don't want to be viewed upon as, oh, they're racist. It was a wedge bill. It was a wedge bill, is what it was. And because a lot of people don't understand the difference, as you pointed out, racism, anti-racism, equality, equity, a lot of people don't really, they interchange these terms. And what that bill really says, when you understand it, and I now understand it much better, it's a horrible bill. It's a horrible bill.
Well, there are so many things they mislead people with when it comes to branding or titling things today, whether it's legislation or even the names of charities. Today, family planning clinics are really abortion clinics. Right? It's anti-racism isn't really about anti-racism. It's about controlling people, thought crimes, I suppose, depending on your point of view as to what racism is, but it is in itself a very racist bill.
Oh.
And because it fits the actual definition of racism. And yet here we are, and I can see why people are very concerned about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They don't want their children being taught that information in school, and I wholeheartedly agree with them. And like I said, once I discovered just how bad that bill was, and I had greater understanding of it, there is absolutely no way that I would ever have supported, that particular bill. But that's okay. Our party, the Ontario Party, has come right out and said that we are totally against the critical race theory being taught in schools today.
It's worse. The worst part of it is also the way that it's written and the way that it would be applied in school systems, because, and you touched on the wording, and I don't have it in front of me, but and maybe you could just read that section again where it refers to someone's thoughts or
Yeah. Okay. So racism, and I've got it right here in front of me. Racism means the use of socially constructed ideas of race to justify or support, whether consciously or subconsciously. Yep. The notion that one's race is superior to another.
So that's the problem, even subconsciously, which means, and you pointed this out, if you're born white, you're instantly racist. And if someone doesn't like you, all they have to do is say, "You know what, Rick, I think you're a racist, and you say racist things and you think racist things, and you're done." Because that in itself, you have subconscious racist thoughts, and there's no due process. There's no defense. You're going to lose your job.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? The other thing too is that, how in school, Rick, we strive to enhance and to build up the self-esteem of students, right? Well, what does this do to white students in school? That bill is designed to make any white child feel inferior. And that is so, so wrong.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. I don't know how we got away from judging people on the content of their character and got all the way over here to judging everything based on the color of someone's skin. How did I'm at a bit of a loss and feel like I'm living in a dystopian science fiction movie. We need to find some way to get back, Rick. And somebody asked, how do you intend to can't remember, it was a few comments back, but someone's asking, what are you going to do about getting rid of this Marxist ideology or slant in Canada or Ontario?
Well, again, my powers to be are obviously in Ontario, and as I've stated earlier, we are totally against that. I mean, Brenden hit the nail on the head earlier when he talked about socialism, and communism, and it's Marxism, and this is where we're headed right now. I mean, you take a look at the things that the Prime Minister, the things he's been saying, the fringe minority, and then all of a sudden, parliamentarians, across the pond are just grilling him, and he's a disgrace. And I'm sorry if we have some liberal friends on your podcast, but they have to admit that based on what he said and what he's done, look at it, take off your blinders, pull your blinders back, and look at what he's really said, what he's really done. And I'm sure that they would say, you know what, he is a disgrace to our country right now. So it's tough, but being astute to the types of bills that can come forward by any member in the Ontario legislature, we need to be very aware of what it is that the individuals themselves are trying to advocate on their own behalf.
Kristen Ben says, no liberal friends here.
Yeah.
And Christy Nicole says, so Rick Nicholls is embarrassed that he voted yes on the bill, but there is nothing that can be done now. Oh no, it hasn't passed yet.
No,
It hasn't
And
passed.
it's a long way from being passed, apparently. So
Yeah, no,
not a done deal.
Christy missed my point. I was embarrassed once I found out exactly the true meaning of what this bill was all about. I think if anybody who voted yes in favor of it found out what the true meaning of that bill was, Christy, they'd be embarrassed as well. But not to say nothing can be done. We've got there are other elements that can be put into place to prevent this bill from moving into third reading. And here's the other good thing about it as well. Here we are, it's the 28th of March, and I am anticipating that 1 month from now, the writ will drop. It should drop maybe a week earlier, okay? And if that's the case, we have this week, we have 2 more weeks here in the legislature. Then we take a break for Easter. That's a constit week. And then we're scheduled to come back for 1 more week. But there's a good chance that writ might drop just when the House rises prior to Easter or that week. What's my point? There's not going to be enough time for that bill to get through unless the PC government House Leader Paul Calandra wants to make a deal with the NDP, and in that deal, he throws in Bill 67. Then we're all in trouble.
Well, it petrifies me. If that bill passes, and I think there's probably more force behind it, more momentum behind it than people realize. Because I think there's a national initiative to get all of this type of ideology into place. And I think this is meant to be a template for other provinces so that it can be implemented across the country.
And look at the fact
private members
that
bill
was
or
the
not.
second reading. That was the second reading too, right? Like nobody talked about it until the
Our
second reading.
whole society is infected with this. Every institution, every corporation, and this is just another step toward it, and it gets it right into the school systems, right where they want it. And I'm really afraid of it, as many people on here tonight are. And we've talked a lot about it. We don't need to keep going on and on about it, but
Yeah,
I agree with Jordan Peterson. I think it's the most dangerous piece of legislation probably ever proposed in the country.
Yeah. He is strongly on the Ontario Party side with it when it comes to our stance against CRT and what needs to be done.
So go back to August 19th. Prior to that, I'd been outside your office with some other people asking you questions about lockdowns and so on. And some people, are asking, why didn't you speak up publicly earlier about all of that? Why did you wait all the way until August? Because we'd seen Randy Hillier, we'd seen Derek Sloan, we'd seen Maxime Bernier, and some others come out and become very vocal. You came to the party a little bit later. Why did you wait as long as you did?
Okay. And that's a fair question to some degree. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes. And you'll recall, Rick, when you and others actually came to my office, a lot of politicians would not even go out and talk to them. But what did I do?
You came out, and to your credit, you met with the people face to face. And what you didn't do is you didn't call the cops, run away and hide, and have everybody charged with crimes and have us all thrown in jail. So I give you credit for that. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks. So let's backtrack a little bit. And
you could have. I could be still rotting away in the Crowbar Hilton downtown.
It's
right.
funny, but it's not.
It's not because they're doing it.
They are doing it.
Oh.
I've never ever hid from people who want to come and talk to me. I really haven't. My door's always been open. My saying, has always been for over 10 and a half years, accessible and accountable. And by virtue of this Bill 67, when you mess up, you fess up. I'm being held accountable. I'm holding myself to account on that. And accessibility, I'll go out and I'll meet with protesters. But your original question, Rick, regarding, Rick, why didn't you come out sooner? Well, I did, but not in the manner in which like a Randy Hillier did or some of the others. Here's what I was doing behind the scenes that nobody knows. Every Tuesday afternoon, we always had a caucus meeting. And unfortunately with COVID, it was never face to face. It was as we're doing right now. It was Zoom meetings. And we would sit there and we would listen to presentations given to us from the science table and or the advisory table. And they would be inflating numbers and they would be, painting doom and gloom. And look, I'm not suggesting for a moment that COVID wasn't real. And while I'm on that thought about vaccines, I repeat, I am not an anti-vaxxer. I've got all my other vaccines, all my other shots. But it was this particular COVID-19 one that I was not convinced on. I digress. So let me go back to these particular meetings that we were all a part of. And I would question the science table and the advisory table on their numbers, especially when they started saying, well, now we're going to be, I was against mandatory vaccines right from the get-go. But then they started saying that we are going to be offering, and we want students 12 to 17 to get vaccinated. And I started raising questions, and I would ask the same questions. what clinical trials, what data do you have with this experimental drug that you want to inject into the arms of our 12 to 17-year-olds, because up to 17 they're not considered an adult, and so we want to do that, and here's the other thing. What really bothered me was, if you didn't get your vaccine, how many parents do you think called my office and saying, my son or my daughter want to play hockey, they want to play basketball, they want to play sports, school sports, and they were not allowed to play that because they weren't vaccinated? All right. So I would start questioning a lot of that, to the point where, I'm sure that they were saying, here he goes again. And then when they said, we're now authorizing 5 to 11-year-olds to get this big needle jabbed into their tiny little arms, I just about blew a gasket. Said, how do you know? Where's the data? Where's the, to ensure that this is in fact safe for children 5 to 11? Because now, I have grandkids. I've got one that's going to become my oldest is going to be a teenager on Friday. But my youngest just turned 1 on Valentine's Day this year. I'm fighting for my grandkids. I'm fighting for people's kids. I'm fighting for families who are feeling coerced and feel that they don't get the jab, then then they're going to lose their job and lose their home, lose their marriage, and so on. Well, that's when I started to really run and get your 4th and 5th, Oh God. Some people got a good sense of humor. I like it, Pam. I like it. So my point is that that's when I really started to get really, really serious about this, because then I started looking at myself and saying, listen, I don't want this vaccine, and I definitely don't want it for my grandkids. I definitely don't want it for other kids and families. Kids should be allowed to, play their sports, because again, kids not getting the shot meant that they couldn't play sports, and that had a detrimental effect on their mental health. Now, I want to share something else. I was on a podcast back, oh golly, when was that now? It's got to be, where are we now? March. It was either in December or it was in January. But sadly, it was reported just before that podcast that a mother took her 2 children to get them vaccinated. I will not state where, I know where. And on the way back to the car after the 2 children had been vaccinated, one of the children collapsed and died. Horrible. Absolutely horrible. So we wanted to get some verification on that. And just this past week, we had a special investigator who in fact confirmed that was in fact the case. Can you imagine the guilt on that mother? And I don't fault her, because all the advertising by this Ontario PC government, was saying, you got to protect Grandma and Grandpa. You got to protect your coworkers. Get vaccinated. The words of Christine Elliott, the Minister of Health, her words, her infamous words that will go down in history. Get vaccinated. They're safe and effective. Those are her words every time. She even used those words today when I was talking about Directive 6 and some other things. So it's sad that this is going on, but that's where it all started with me. When somebody said, Rick, why didn't you jump in sooner? Well, I'm a processor, and I was pushing against the establishment being the science table and the advisory table, who say, follow the science. Well, guess what? They're not following the science right now because the science is telling them a different story. And that is disgusting. It's sad. It is just horrible. So that was how for me, Rick, Brenden, it was like a crescendo for me. I started kind of slow, but then it began to build and build and build and build. And finally I said, enough is enough. I am not getting that vaccine. In life, there are intended consequences and unintended consequences. Now, keep in mind, a 10-year veteran, the deputy speaker of the government deputy speaker of the Ontario Legislative Assembly, had a lot to lose. But I said, I will not comply to a mandate that the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, flip-flopped on and said, I will not mandate them, and then suddenly mandates it for all of his caucus. And it was like, well, why did you do that? Well, the NDP and the Liberals all said that they're vaccinated, to which I said to Doug, since when do we listen to what the NDP and the Liberals have to say? Well, we got to get this, we got to do this, we got to do this. And of course, he mandated it. You know, my colleagues, former colleagues, complied. I said no. For me, it was not unintended consequences. For me, it was intended consequence, because I knew that if I didn't comply, that I was going to be removed from caucus and sit as an independent. But now I sit as the deputy leader of the Ontario Party. And I say, thank you, Doug Ford, because you have given me my voice. I've always had it, but I was always suppressed, because of the powers to be, in the political powers to be in the PC Party of Ontario.
I have something else I want to ask you about. It's a little, it's to deal with another piece of changed legislation. What's your view on the changes that were made? And I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, because maybe you're not familiar or up to speed, but I'll just ask you. Assisted suicide legislation. There were changes made in Ontario, making it much easier for people to apply for and get approved for assisted suicide. And I really only just became aware of this as being, in my view, a problem, in my personal view. And because it doesn't fit what I thought it was supposed to be about at all. Are you familiar with it, Rick, or am I asking?
No, I am familiar with it, Rick, and I am totally, vehemently opposed. Totally, vehemently opposed. For me, it falls under conscious rights as well. For someone to say, I'm going to play God, and therefore I will inject you, with a serum that will eventually stop your heart and you will die. Now, there are those whose perhaps standard of living, not standard of living, but their what's the word I'm looking for here? Maybe it is. Anyway, their quality of life. Let's use that, okay? That their quality of life has deteriorated severely. And I think of poor individuals who have suffered from maybe an accident and are, confined to wheelchairs, or they are quadriplegic, or people who are in fact, they're terminal, and so on, and they're in a lot of pain. But again, what's the oath for the doctors, Rick? What is that? What's it called?
Do no harm.
Do no harm. That's right.
Is that they call the Hippocratic Oath?
Yes, sir.
That's what it is.
Yep, that's what it is. Do no harm. And yet legislation is saying to the doctors, you must do harm, because that individual wants you to kill them. And the doctors are saying, no, my Hippocratic Oath is do no harm. So we fully
can I share a person? It's just something I've become aware of, and I'm not going to use names or tell anybody who this is. But this is how crazy this has become. And I find it strange because I think it was only about a year ago that these changes to that legislation were made.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not an expert on the legislation.
Fair enough.
I'm aware of a person, elderly, just recently locked down. Basically, they lived alone, pretty much. Not a lot of visits from family, but still functional, driving a car, but diminished a bit. Okay. So got injected. Okay. I don't know if that's any part of it, but a little bit more diminished mentally. And so decided it was the family decided time to go into a long-term care home. So sells the house, transitions into moving into a long care home, but can get up, go around, take a taxi, go shopping, do whatever they want to do, but clearly depressed after having been locked down in their home alone for 2 years.
Yeah.
Because of the pandemic, then having their life completely turned upside down, now in a home where this person doesn't really know anybody, then meets somebody in a hallway who says, "Oh, I applied for assisted suicide and I got approved," and then gets the idea, that's a pretty good idea. I'm going to apply too. So now they're well on their way to getting approved, and they're already there. But this is a person who can still get up, can cook for themselves, can call an Uber or a taxi and go shopping. This is not a person who is facing terminal cancer, is in some pain because they have some other medical conditions, but they're on pain medications and they can still function. And they're choosing a day a few months from now to just end it all. And the family doesn't want this to happen, but it's going to. And in my view, this legislation is freaking insane.
It is.
Because this person has a lot to live for.
Yeah.
Family, grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
But Rick, I don't know what's gone wrong with our government, our society, but this is absolutely insane. I always thought it was for people who were extremely ill, had no chance, in a lot of pain, nothing, just at the very end, right?
Yeah.
Something like that. But this legislation, the way it's been changed, if this can 2 people now that I know of. Any other thoughts on that? Because, man, I tell you, that's got to change.
Yeah. What that person doesn't need is an injection. What that person needs is mental health tools to help them, because somewhere along the line, their thinking has gone a bit sideways, and that person can be saved. I believe that person can be saved. Get them the proper mental health tools and people talking to the individual. But it's sad what causes people. But see, that's one of the things that we've identified with the lockdowns. They've been so harmful to people. And one of the things that the Ontario Party, what we would do is we would pass legislation that in fact gives the citizens of Ontario the strongest protections for freedom of conscience, freedom of religion, freedom of expression, and even freedom of assembly. Freedom of assembly. You know how when they shut down churches? Why? That's lefty idealism. They shut them down, because we know that people get strong and they get, their faith strengthens when they're, with people of like minds, people of the same faith. And so let's shut them down so they can't get together. And we'll tell them, well, you can't because we're worried about the transmission of this and that and everything else. And by the way, let's wear masks. Have you noticed that you still see people walking the streets by themselves with a mask on?
They're psychologically damaged. Our
Oh,
society is psychologically damaged.
oh, you know, and some of those people are young people. I mean, I'm up here in Toronto, and I see young people, walking around wearing masks. It's fun. I'll give you a personal example. It was last night. I was jumped on the elevator. I had parked my vehicle in the underground park, and the car or the elevator went up to ground, and the door opened, and there were a young couple wearing masks, saw me in there without a mask on, and said, "Thank you very much. We'll get the next one." And I went, "Oh, brother, okay, okay." And that worries me because, I mean, at some point, will they ever, realize, the psychological effects that a lot of this, is happening right now, with what's going on. It's so unfortunate. And you're correct. They have been conditioned. They have been conditioned.
Yeah, and you try to be respectful. Like, I don't say anything to anybody if they're wearing a mask. It's your choice, but it's just clear that the fear is still embedded in our communities.
And
Yeah.
that kind of leads me to my question. This election that you're going into is going to probably be one of the craziest Ontario has seen in a long time, especially with everything that I've seen from the Liberal Party. Stephen Del Duca, he's going to be playing on a lot of that fear. What do you think it's looking like here? Do you think that? Well, I mean, I know you would probably hope to form government with the Ontario Party. You say it's not likely, but in your honest opinion, what would you be projecting here?
Well, good question. And I've been asked this question on several other podcasts, and I was on, one of your other freedom fighter groups, the Rebel. And Dave Menzies asked me that question too. And I said, Dave, sadly, and of course I was with the Ontario Party at the time too. I said, sadly, I project a Ford government once again. However, I believe that this go around it will be a minority government, and as a result of that, I'm hoping that the Ontario Party, as I said, would form and would become a reputable, formidable opposition party to Doug Ford and his people, whereby they will need our support to get legislation passed, or else it won't pass. Plain and simple, unless, of course, the NDP decide with the PCs, and that's highly unlikely. And the Liberals might do the same as well.
That's the stuff of nightmares, anyway.
Oh golly, but you're right though, Brenden. I feel that this upcoming election, it's going to be a very different election from most people. Am I concerned about vote splitting with the, with the other Conservative Party that while they say they're a Conservative Party, I'm not so sure. But again, let's just say technically we have three Conservative parties, and there could be some vote splitting. As we said earlier, let's not run against each other in certain ridings, so that people will, only have maybe two Conservative parties. You either want Doug Ford, who's left of center, or you want, in this case, the Ontario Party, who's right of center, a true Conservative Party. But there probably will be some vote splitting as well. And it may not be so much to say, well, we want to win that riding, but we don't want the Ontario Party to win that riding. And that's what I see happening. It's sad. It's unfortunate, because people who know me in the riding know that I have, given my, next to my firstborn, I've
Yes.
I've worked very hard, for the riding, and I've loved it. I've loved every moment of it. Has everybody agreed with me? No. Have I agreed with everybody? No. But I do have some serious concerns about the election. And here's one thing, and I just happened to see this. Mike is asking a question here about digital ID. If I can, is it okay to go there?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm worried about it too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
people want to know.
So a few weeks ago, in the legislature, I addressed a question to the premier, and he, by the way, happened to be there that particular morning. He's not always there. And so I asked him about, the vaccination passes and how you are saying that you are going to end the vaccine passes and the QR codes and all that stuff. Because the QR codes basically it was a form of digital ID, because Rick, you'd walk into a restaurant. Can I see your QR code? You showed me so you're vaccinated. Oh, okay. Guess what? My medical records are my business and nobody else's business. And with all due respect to a person at the door checking to see whether they should let you in or not, it's none of their business. So I asked that question of Ford. And I asked them, I said, so you're going to be getting rid of the QR codes, the vaccination passes. And I had warned him before. I said, don't go down that avenue, Doug. Do not go down that avenue. You are going to end up with a split society. But he went down there anyway. He said, one day, I don't want to have these vaccine passports and QR codes. And the next day, bang, there they were. There they were. And then people would wear those QR codes and vaccine passports as a badge of honor, because I can get into restaurants and you can't. Ha ha.
Oh, gosh.
So I asked him the question. I said, so there's an election coming, Premier. And because of the election coming, you are, in fact, dropping the QR codes, and opening things up. But rumor has it that the Prime Minister is looking at implementing a federally mandated passport that would have all your data and information on it. So he punted the question over to the Associate Minister of Government, Digital Government, and I didn't get an answer from him at all. You go on my website, you can check it out. But basically, it's talking about, it'll be so convenient because your driver's license and your insurance, and he didn't really specifically say, and your medical information is going to be on this digital ID. I mean, I get it. I mean, look, 40 years ago, if somebody said to you, can you believe it? But on March 28th, 2022, Brenden and Rick are going to be looking at each other on a computer. What's a computer? And something called Zoom. Well, I might be known as a baby Zoomer. but that sounds ridiculous. But now we've moved to this point. And so digital ID, is it coming? Yeah, maybe.
Actually, if we could take a look here, I do have the Ontario document up, and it kind of goes through it. We could take a look at that. And so here it is, digital ID in Ontario. Learn about Ontario's digital identity program, which introduces a new convenient way to prove who you are that will make accessing online and in-person services simpler, safer, and more secure. It's for your safety. What digital ID is and is not. Digital ID is an electronic version of trusted government that provides better safety, more security, and stronger privacy and physical identification.
Stronger privacy. That's interesting.
Yeah. It can be securely stored in a digital wallet app for smartphones and other digital devices like tablets or computers, and will let people and businesses prove who they are both online and in person. Digital ID is the foundation that will enable easier access to online services that makes Ontario one of the world's most digitally advanced jurisdictions, with a value
that in itself worries me.
With a value for Ontarians, businesses, and the government That is estimated at $20 billion. So they're
Yeah, we're right on the cutting edge of taking away all your privacy and rights.
Oh, but wait, there is more. So this is what it tells you it is. It says it's convenient. It lives in your mobile phone. You don't have to. Well, I don't know about you boys, but I never lose my wallet. Secure. Your data is protected using strong encryption, and unlike your physical wallet, your digital ID can easily be turned off if your phone is lost or stolen.
Until you get hacked.
Until you get hacked.
Yeah, for sure.
Privacy preserving. For example, if you need to show you are age of majority, the verifier will only need to know if you are over 18, not your date of birth or your actual age.
Oh, I'm relieved to that. I don't want them to know my birthday. Gee whiz, I might not be allowed into certain places.
Oh, come on. Some 14-year-old kid is going to hack into this thing in 5 minutes and find out everything about me.
Oh, I know.
I know it. I just know it.
Let's see. Verifiable. Your driver's license, a digital ID is certified government proof that you are who you say you are. You are in control. You have full and complete control over what bits of your information you want to share and with whom you want to share it. No one can access your data without your agreement.
Except the government.
Ooh, look at this part.
Oh, you're sounding very skeptical, Rick. Come on.
Me?
Look at this section here. It says voluntary. Signing up for digital ID will be optional. You can use physical ID whenever you want. And
is it voluntary? I thought that they were going to mandate this. No?
That was Trudeau, the talk that he was going to federally mandate it, but we haven't heard the rest of the story yet.
Well,
voluntary for now, I guess.
Yeah.
I think this section here was written with Rick Walker in mind. It is not stored in a central database. Your digital ID is stored only in your personal mobile device, for example, your phone or tablet or computer, and can be turned off remotely if your device or computer is lost or stolen.
That can't be true, because the cops are going to, as soon as they pull you over, they're going to know everything about you. They practically already do.
Yeah. It is not a tracking device. The government will not know where you have been or where you use your digital ID. That part isn't true. Doug Ford admitted at the height of the pandemic that they were looking at cell phone data and they were tracking people.
Oh, yeah.
We know that they were doing that.
Yeah. Not usable without your permission. You must always consent. Agree before sharing any information. So
again, but it's a government ID system. The government's going to have access to it all. Mm-hmm. They can't tell me that the government doesn't have full access to all of it.
Well,
I don't know if that even matters. Like, because they already have your driver's license information. They have your health card information. They have all that information anyway. I would think it's all correlated someplace. And if you are pulled over for a traffic stop, they check the license plate number, they ask to see your ID, then they run you to find out whatever they can find out about you. There's a lot of information in there, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
am I missing something here?
Well, when it comes to the government, it seems to me they always just go ahead. It's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is to ask for permission.
No, they don't ask for forgiveness. They just throw you in jail if you disagree.
They just do it. Yeah.
Well, this is what Rick Nicholls was talking about, and the Liberal Party of Canada, federal, has sunk quite a bit of money into this program already, to the tune of a couple $1 million, I believe. And this is the Known Traveler Digital ID program. We have shared it on the show before.
And right up front, the World Economic Forum is one of the main pilot partners. What could go wrong? What could possibly go wrong with that?
You will own nothing and you will like it. You will be happy.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, but the government is throwing money at this project already. Probably a few $1 million at this point.
A few million. A few $100 million, probably.
Wow.
Yeah.
Look at that. The KLM, Air Canada, Toronto Pearson Airport. Wow. Can't recall the other one. Yeah.
The Netherlands.
Yeah.
What are the...
Well, I know that there are serious concerns about privacy surrounding all of this because I can't remember her name, but I believe it's the Federal Privacy Commissioner. Is that correct? I did hear an interview with her about a year ago talking about all this. There's a lot to be worried about here.
Yeah, this program here has been going on for probably like 3-4 years, I would say.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of stuff behind the scenes, guys. A lot of stuff behind the scenes. They're now starting to become a little more bold. The more confident they are in their programs, I think the more bold they get, and they'll actually tell you, this is what I'm going to do to you, and you're going to like it, and so on. So, fellas, I'm looking at the clock here, and unfortunately, I have another Zoom meeting coming up in roughly 15 minutes. Don't have to leave yet, but if I was wondering if there was any other questions or anything else that you'd like to cover up.
Yeah, I'm just, Rick, to get away from all this stuff here, with the election coming up, and you've touched on this already, but you've got a lot of fragmentation, in conservative support. I'm just really worried because I don't like what I've seen going on with the Ford government at all, not acting like a conservative government at all. I guess I'm looking for some words of reassurance, and I don't know where all this goes. In your riding, you have Rhonda Jubinville, who was a PPC person, supporter. She's now running for the new Blue Party, and then you have this Populist Party of Ontario, which is an offshoot of the PPC. You have the Ontario Party of the Conservatives. I just see no hope. Because if we get 4 more years of Doug Ford, it's bad enough to be dystopian. If he doesn't win and the Ontario Party isn't big enough or strong enough, or if there's too much fragmentation with all these smaller parties, I don't see any of them having enough traction to really, it's nice to have a voice, I guess, of real opposition. But if the Liberals win, or it's even worse than the Conservatives. And if the NDP wins, God help us all, because it's like right off the cliff on day one. As far as I'm concerned, it's like, what the hell are we going to do?
Yeah.
There's nothing. I don't see any light at the end of this tunnel. All I see is, honestly, a summer where they're making us feel a little bit better because we get to take off our masks, so that people kind of forget about all their problems while they enjoy the sun for a couple of months. And then when the weather turns colder, they're going to point to some case numbers and then lock everybody down, force everybody to wear the masks after the election and whoever gets into power, and just hammer us even harder, because that's really the way it seems. And I just don't see much hope. And if it's not them, it's the feds. It's Justin Trudeau spewing hate, dividing everybody, ripping the country apart, jailing truckers, jailing pastors, hammering on the churches, letting them burn to the ground, not saying anything about it, except I kind of understand why they might do that and burn a church down. The country is in peril. I just don't know what the hell we're supposed to do. And then people say, well, I thought, let's find a political solution to this. So let's support this party or try to get this person elected. And what do people do? They vote for brands. They vote for the same parties they always vote for. They flip-flop back and forth, and they say, well, don't vote for these guys because might split the vote, so we got to get Trudeau out. So it's like there's nothing. Everybody gets what I'm saying. And I can't even get the words out anymore, because it's just complete despair. It's darkness. And the only people who seem to walk around and not be upset about it are the ones who all they care about is they get to go to Costco and they come home and watch CBC at night and eat their Doritos in front of the television set and don't think about anything. Aside from that, we're all screwed. So what are we going to do, man? Just help me out here, Rick. Make me feel better before you leave, because we need some ray of sunshine. Make me feel better.
We're not talking about sunny ways.
So,
and I'm serious, because what did we see today? Randy Hillier surrendering himself to police. We see Jeremy McKenzie honestly, let's be real about this. I don't know if you're familiar with his story, but the guy's just been targeted by the government, and they've weaponized the cops to go after the guy and label him a white domestic freaking terrorist when he's just got a goddamn podcast making fun of things, and they're making him out to be some threat to the existential threat to the sovereignty of Canada, and it's ridiculous. And I watch the CBC, they just make stuff up so they can go after people. It's bloody ridiculous. I just don't know where all this goes anymore. I just don't know. We'll let Rick wrap up with his phone call there. And, Rick.
Sorry, Rick. I just,
that's okay.
That's my other call coming in saying, we need you. Yeah.
I understand. Final words of wisdom, words of inspiration, something. You know what? Yeah.
And Rick, first of all, Rick and Brenden, thanks again, guys. I've always enjoyed, being on your podcast. I love the openness that you allow and the freedom that you allow me to have maybe that's because we're freedom fighters, maybe something like that. Right. But you know what, again, looking ahead, I anticipate there's going to be some change government wise. I don't think that marriage made in hell is going to last between Singh and Trudeau. Because somebody's going to get their nose out of joint and will cave. I'm sure that will happen. Maybe not for another year, but that's quite possible. With regards to the provincial election, please. So I want your audience to know that I've worked hard for the last 10 plus years, in trying to bring change to Chatham, Kent. The Chatham's treatment, the Children's Treatment Center for Chatham, Kent, very instrumental in getting that. Working with their people and Donald Litwood Mackey and Mike Genge, and then also with the Meadow Park Nursing Home, helping them secure property. Well, they did all the work on the securing property, but I helped them with regards to funding, and that's going to be right up basically on the corner of Kyle Trail and McNaughton. You've got the Build a Barrier, and there's a lot of work being done on 401. You just can't wave a magic wand and expect that to be finished. It's going to take probably 10 years to cover off everything that they need. Highway 3, again, we're working on that and twinning that, and I was instrumental in that. But now they're making other announcements, and they're bringing other ministers in now saying, well, look what they're doing. Now, hold on. I had a lot to do with a lot of that, but it is what it is. So looking ahead, I'm very optimistic with regards to the Ontario Party. I believe that we are the true Conservative Party. And if people want a true Conservative Party that is also fiscally responsible, but also built on truth, transparency, faith, family, and freedoms, then we are the party that they need to throw their support behind.
So even if you don't form the government, can you make a difference? I guess that's the question.
The answer to that is yes, we can. Because again, we want to be able to become a formidable opposition party. And look, even if we have 5 seats and Doug Ford is, 4 seats short of a majority government, then guess what? He needs the Ontario Party support to help him get legislation passed. And this is where I listen to my constituents, and our other members will be listening to their constituents and bringing forth ideas to say, this is the bill that you want us to support. Well, let's walk through it, and we'll tell you what we like, what we don't like, what we want changed, what we would like to add. And that way, that makes government stronger, because as an opposition party, Rick, we will have input, we will have input into that legislation. So there's hope. Okay. There is hope. There is hope.
Okay, well, I'm smiling a little bit.
Good. Well, you know what, and the other thing that I want to encourage people, if they're up to it, if they would like to, I'm having a meeting you mentioned the other night about my. I could mention it. Yep. That this Wednesday night at the Deer Run Golf Course at 7:00. I'm inviting inviting the world, so to speak, to come on out. I'm going to lay out what my campaign plans are and how I'm going to organize. I'm also going to give a good overview of who we are, the Ontario Party, and and be able to answer any questions that people may have as well. So it's going to be a great night. I'm really looking forward to it. And so if anybody is welcome, invite your friends, family. Come on out, and uh, no charge. No charge. It's just come on out and hear what we have to say. We may have coffee and tea for you, but that's it. But that's okay. The sad part is, Rick, you remember I mentioned earlier about my last name is Nicholls, and so I had what we call a war chest, leading up to this particular election. But when I was removed from caucus for reasons that we all know, my riding association had to abandon me. But when they abandoned me, they took that $135,000, and it is now safely, and secure in the hands of the PC candidate that's going to be running against me. So I'm starting with zero. But what I said, I can run a campaign on a shoestring if I have to, and we will.
So I'm going to put it up on the screen here before you go, Rick. What is there an email address or a website where people can go if they want to come out on Wednesday night, or how can they contact you or find out more information?
All right. So the first thing would be go to ontarioparty.ca. And in that they'll see some of our platforms that we're working on right now. There's also an opportunity for them if they want to support us and donate. They can do that as well. We're just probably days away from getting everything finalized at our end in the Chatham-Kent-Leamington Ontario Party Riding Association, where people can actually donate directly to. I mean, if they donate to the Ontario Party, it will still come to my riding, but in addition to that, we're working on getting that going as well. So yeah, if they want more information about who we are and what our vision is, for the future of Ontario and for families in Ontario, that's where they can go, and the information should be there. And again, 7:00 Wednesday night, Deer Run Golf Course. Dress code is casual. Come as you are. Bring friends, family, and come and learn more about my plans for the campaign, as well as for our vision for the future of our province.
And Deer Run is in Chatham-Kent, right?
Yes, it is. Yes, yeah. So it's to get there. The best way is just you take Bloomfield Road, okay, and just go straight south. There's a little zigzag by the truck stop there by 401. But keep going south, and that road, Bloomfield, will take you right there, literally on the corner of Highway 3 and Bloomfield Road. So yeah, so come on in. There's lots of parking, and we've got a big space there, and everybody's welcome.
Outstanding. Well, thank you for joining us tonight, Rick. You spent quite a bit of time with us, and I know your time is precious, and we appreciate you doing that. And good luck Wednesday. Good luck in the upcoming election. And anytime you want to come back and chat more and discuss ideas, the platform's always available to you.
I really appreciate that, Rick. Thank you, Brenden. Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate all you're doing. You're far better than mainstream media. That's for sure.
Appreciate that.
Now watch. Come the election, I won't get any mainstream media coverage now.
That's okay. You don't need them.
No, I don't. That's all right. It's all good. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you. Our privilege. We will chat again.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And there you have it. Rick Nicholls, the first sitting member of provincial parliament in Ontario for the Ontario Party, and now the deputy leader of the Ontario Party, and running again in the riding of Chatham-Kent-Leamington as the incumbent, but now not for the Conservatives because he got kicked out by Doug Ford, and now he's with the Ontario Party and Derek Sloan, and we will see what happens. And there I was again, being Mr. Negative at the end, but I'm telling you, the country is in such a state. I I find it hard to see a silver lining right now, especially provincially, because I just don't think we can afford 4 more years of the same, and the other parties likely to emerge in a position of power, the Liberals and NDP. I think they would be even worse than what we have.
Yep, it would be. There would be armed guards on like every street corner.
Am I
You'd be able to leave
paranoid,
your
or are
house.
we going for lockdowns again in the fall and masks and all of this crap?
Could be sooner.
Oh, thanks.
Could be sooner.
I thought I was the negative one.
No, I'm consistent
What do you
with
think,
history.
folks? What does everybody out there think? Are we heading for more masks and mandates and all of the and a rinse and repeat in the fall or sooner, with new variants coming from? I think after the election in Ontario, I don't know, because they're not really done with this stuff even in places like Nova Scotia. I think out in BC they still have some mandates in place. It depends on what the politics are like, and that's the thing. It's not about the science; it's about the politics. Depends on
exactly.
Depends on who the politicians are in power. Whether you get more mandates, less mandates, masks, no masks.
Well, I'll tell you this much right now: the Ontario Liberal Party is platforming on more lockdowns and more pokes. They want to update the QR code for even more jabs.
That's what I'm saying. If we get those guys, it's even worse. I mean, Doug Ford came this close to just having people pulled over randomly just because by the cops, and it was the police chiefs. Most of them have been pretty radicalized, as we've seen, with the response to the truckers. But even they said, "Oh, well, wait a minute! I don't think we want to be doing that." We came that close. Just random pullovers. We'll get that when they have the no car Sundays to save fuel. Anyway, it was good to have Rick Nicholls on. He's experienced, knows his way around Queen's Park, knows his way around the political system. That's for sure. He's well versed. Knows what he knows what's going on. That's for sure. And he has emerged as one of the more prominent voices in the freedom movement because of his position on the vaccines, mandates, all of this stuff, right? As of last August. So he has emerged that way.
I don't know what direction I'm heading in at this point, and I'm thinking at this point it would probably not be very good to declare who I am going to vote for publicly at this point. But
well, I know in his riding, right, which is my riding.
Yeah.
I know that everybody around me is torn because they like him, but they also like Rhonda Jubinville, who was on the program. Was it last week? I think about a week ago.
That was like the day I was out with COVID.
Oh, okay. So, was it? All right.
Tuesday? Yeah,
that's
Tuesday.
Right. So she's awesome. I love Rhonda, and she worked tirelessly for the PPC in the federal election on the Liz Valley campaign. Freedom fighter.
She's all around sweetheart.
Yep. And Rick has been there too. And it's actually, I wish we could have them both. To be quite honest, we need both those voices, and somehow, some way, they'll both still emerge and be doing productive and great things for the community. I'm sure of it. It's just unfortunate that they're squaring off against each other in an election like that. And I think they've called each other to talk to each other, and I think there's a lot of mutual respect there as well. So we'll have to see how it rolls out. But yeah, I know that a lot of people are torn. Like, do they support Rhonda because they saw what she did and they like her, or do they support Rick because of his experience and so on? Like, I think that he has the momentum and the name recognition, but now he doesn't have that Conservative Party machine behind him, right? And the money.
He doesn't. And I mean, your political problems are different than mine because I'm a county over too, right? So at the end of the day, it's like, oh well, I'm I'm not going to be convinced one way or the other. And New Blue has already drawn first blood. If you take a look at this ad I brought up.
Oh, I haven't seen this yet.
And so,
oh my God, really?
yeah. And
where is this running?
I am not sure. Somebody took a picture of it and posted it to Facebook. I can try and read it if you want, but I don't want to bore everybody with it. But
yeah, well, let's not get too deep into this right now.
No, there is. I just find it interesting that.
See, I'd heard that, and I'm not surprised. It's politics, right? So politics can get pretty nasty and pretty dirty. But holy smokes, that's pretty strong language.
That is very strong language, and I don't know if they're going to do themselves any favors by going after the little guy.
I had not seen this.
And so it's
how certain Christian leaders exploit their own voters. Wow. Strong language. Mm-hmm. Team Sloan votes for critical race theory in our schools.
And well, you know exactly who that's about, and and there's Jim
Carahalios. Now, I did reach out to Jim, and I'd like for him to come on the program.
Of course.
Rhonda had very good things to say about him, and I really like Rhonda, and I trust Rhonda. I do.
Well, there's lots I like about the New Blue. I don't like that because if you ask me, Doug Ford is the big bad wolf here, and they should be trying to cut him down just for size as much as possible between now and then. And folks, we only have 2 months. June 2nd is election day.
Yeah.
That's cutting it close, and there hasn't even been a debate or anything yet.
It's still cold outside, so people, I don't think, realize how close June 2nd is, because it seems like it's summer, but we're still kind of in winter mode, right? So it seems like it's a long distance off, but we're talking about like just over 60 days, 70 days.
That's right.
And then we're into an election. That's why, I'm not optimistic about a lot of this stuff, because these new parties don't have a lot of time to get organized and get things rolling. The New Blues had the most amount of time in the province of Ontario.
Yeah.
The Ontario Party seems to have some decent organization. They've got some strong candidates in people like Rick Nicholls, right? And Derek Sloan did send out an email blast the other day highlighting some of their other candidates, and they seemed like pretty strong, credible candidates in some of these other ridings. I don't think that they're running a full slate across the province. I could be wrong, but I don't think they have enough to run in every riding. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Probably better to have quality rather than quantity. And but then the PPO, I don't know how they're going to do anything, because they started off
of one candidate.
What's that?
I've only heard of one candidate out of them.
And we've got it was supposed to be the People's Party of Ontario, but they couldn't use the name. Then it went to the Ontario First Party. Randy Hillier was supposed to be the leader, and then he announced that he was going to retire because he couldn't even sit in the legislature anymore because he got booted out. And so it seemed like the whole Ontario First Party, OFP, which was really the provincial extension of the People's Party of Canada, coming off the tail end of what was a fairly strong, valiant federal effort by the PPC to then do something provincially, that seemed to fall apart. And then they've regrouped again under this Populist Party of Ontario banner. And I'm not even sure if they have actual party status, if they're fully registered. I'm not seeing any, I don't know how the heck they expect to get organized in this short period of time. But I mean, they've got maybe a template in place, and I could be entirely surprised. So I'd like to find out some more about that. And we were hoping to have Carla come on to talk about it because she's, involved, and she's announced on social media that she's going to be the candidate. Carla Olson, who was one of our freedom reporters here until she kind of, decided to take an off ramp and get involved politically with that. So, I'm hoping she'll come on and talk about the PPO. But more than that, I'd like to find out who the leader is and get that person on. I want Jim Carhalios to come on because we want to give him lots of time on here to talk about the new blue as well. And I'd like Derek Sloan to come on to talk about. I want them all to come on. I want all of them.
Yeah.
I even want the NDP and the Liberal guy to come on, man. Like, bring them all. Let's have a conversation. But
that's
even though they're
partially
going
why
to scare me.
Well, the NDP one might scare me, but
Liberals never used to scare me, but they do now.
oh gosh. Sometimes I wake up in a cold sweat.
But I always we will always be respectful. We'll always be fair.
Of course.
I may express my opinion, as I've been known to do from time to time on here, because I don't have to keep my opinion to myself now, like I used to when I was working for CTV as just a regular reporter, journalist. But now this is a different deal, and this would be a good time, I think, to remind people that if you can support us, you can do so by going to freedomreporters.com. Freedomreporters.com. We do really need your help. Really do. We're putting a lot of time into this. We got plans. I have new equipment actually that I ordered for that phone system. Should be here tomorrow.
Okay,
so I can hook that up. I think we've got her figured out. So it has to be a particular kind of system because we have to vet the calls screen the calls before we put people on, and we have to put people into the queue, and it's got to be it's a system. It has to be handled professionally, properly. So it's all getting set up, and I think we've got it all ironed out. Hopefully tomorrow we can get some calls on with putting people's voices to their names, so we get the Maverick family involved. But
exactly.
If you can support us, go to freedomreporters.com or click the link in the YouTube and Facebook or Rumble descriptions, and you can support us that way. Be greatly appreciated, and we do appreciate all the support we've had right now. In fact, we're also, as of today, we're investing in some new software so that we can improve the live streams to reach out onto more platforms. Started to do more work on a website that we're going to be putting up so that we can have not only content laid out on these social media platforms, but also on servers, so that if we're censored, kicked off any particular platform or platforms, we always have our own website that we can go to. And I'm taking steps to work around any of the censorship laws that might be coming down the pipe, and I think they are within the next few months from the federal government with regard to the internet. So we'll be doing we're going to be taking steps to remain lawful, but also make sure that we can continue to broadcast to everyone out there in a meaningful way. But we need funds to do it. We can't do it all for free because there are expenses associated with getting all of this stuff set up. And the channel has really exploded in terms of audience. Over 3 million downloads in the last month.
And it's been absolutely crazy. And if you're unable to help us out financially, please consider smashing the like button and hitting the subscribe button and sharing with your mother, your brother, your father, your sisters, your friends, your friends' friends.
Yeah. And we do have people watching all over Canada, the U.S., and even in other countries now. It's been great. Love the feedback. Love the growth in the audience. Please keep sharing, and let's get it out there. Other stories to talk about tonight, though. Other things going on. The People's Convoy, still at Hagerstown Speedway, made some changes. They announced them sort of last night. And today they went to Pennsylvania. And then they announced that they are going to California. So that was unexpected. I didn't expect that to happen. This is not live footage. This is from last night, and this is them announcing it. I want to let this roll so that you guys can get a handle on what's going on with these guys, and we can have a little discussion about this. I think it's worth a little bit of time, and my hat goes off to these guys. They've been working so hard and sacrificing so much, and you can see how hard it is with, you know, for them to do what they're doing, and how hard it is to achieve anything here. They are making progress, but let's bring this up and listen to what they said. This was last night, and they're explaining what they're going to be doing.
That we need to stop for our kids and our grandkids, which is why we're all here. This is the type of nonsense that creates a tyrannical government.
Here, let's just roll it back
the
a little
reason
bit.
that we are here. However, I think stopping those is more important at this point in time than getting the emergency declaration repealed, because that's already in place, and we need to stop stuff like these bills from getting in place. Otherwise, the rest of us that don't live in California are going to end up subject to the same situation.
So he was talking about new legislation in California, and it was
the problem with this is these bills aren't very well known. They're public knowledge, but they don't ever advertise them because, well, I don't think I need to explain why. So what I want to know is, what do you all think about heading to California?
Brenden, do you think I need to roll that back and let him explain what was going on in California that's taking them out there?
No, you kind of already a bunch of
bills. It's just
and stuff.
there's more legislation pending in California, and it's more pandemic stuff, and so yeah, that's what precipitated this.
We're not done here, but we'll go to California and raise awareness on this along the way, and hopefully gain more people like we did on our way here. And then, once we stop this, we will come back to finish this job.
There's a lady back here says, "Damn, I just came from California."
This is the type of stuff that we need to stop for our kids and our grandkids, which is why we're all here. This is the type of nonsense that creates a tyrannical government. This is the type of nonsense that's going to keep us from being free people. And not everybody understands the meaning of free people. They think, well, you can go to the gas station and buy a pack of gum all day long. You're free. One of those talked about tracking people due to their health history. Tracking people in this country is not legal per the Constitution. It's absurd, it's ridiculous, and the thought of a 12-year-old making their own medical decisions is, I don't even know what word to use for that. It's scary. It's scary. Right. Yes, it is. I agree. You all are saying some good stuff. We're going to convoy to Harrisburg tomorrow if you want to go. We're going to leave early.
Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
And then we're going to start getting things prepared to take the People's Convoy back across the country to California and raise awareness to these 10 bills before we lose this country further than what we already have. I'm extremely proud and encouraged and happy that so many of you have chosen to stay and fight. And I realize it's been a little mundane and we all feel like maybe we aren't getting somewhere, but I guarantee you that we are. We've seen the looks on people's faces from the stories I've heard when pamphlets have been handed out in DC change once they realize what we're really about. We've seen a whole country wake up and come together as we traveled across. We've seen this whole track packed with people. We've seen truckers, doctors, lawyers, nurses, police officers, bankers, airline pilots, farmers, the people that make America go round, all come together. And we're going to continue that. And I'm glad that you all want to follow along, because if you didn't get to come across from California to here, boy, you're in for a treat. And we're going to take a little more southern route, so it's a little warmer than this.
Hey, I got a 99 Dodge Cummins with no Jeff. They let me in there?
Yep. It's America. We're free.
California?
Don't worry about it. Anyway, it's cold. And I know you all want to get out of the cold. That's the plans. If anybody objects, please say now, because I want it to the court of public opinion. But it sounded like everybody's pretty okay with that situation.
Let's go!
Now, if anybody's opposed, say it now. Well, that settles it. We're going to Harrisburg tomorrow, and then we're going to start packing up and heading west. And y'all can start California dreaming.
What do you think about that, Joe?
Excited. I get to go home.
Where you go?
Okay, Brenden, what do you think about that?
I don't think anybody's paying attention anymore. And, I mean, people aren't going to notice much more about this in California, I suppose. I respect what they're doing. I wish them well. But, man, they need to be a little more consistent with fighting the one thing and trying to get more headway with where they're at. But now they're going to backtrack and go back to California where they started from. I don't know. I don't buy it. California sucks. It's probably the worst place on the planet. You would have to pay me a lot of money to go to California. Send us donations at freedomreporters.com. Send Brenden Kennedy to California.
No, I don't think so. Not today.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
We're not going to California.
Yeah, I don't want to go to California. But look, man, they need to be consistent with what they're doing, and with how states' rights work in America, they're not going to be able to change anything there anyway. Not with California.
I don't know. They're up against so much. You know, they rolled into the DC area. I think everyone had high hopes and high expectations, but they learned from what happened in Ottawa, and they learned from what happened January 6th. So, and so too have their political opponents, and they're using the cops, right? So they know that if they roll into DC with those trucks and do anything disruptive at all, major crackdown. And they're preventing the trucks from going down there. So they're and they're clearly concerned, as they should be, that if they don't want to get arrested. They don't want these guys to have their lives destroyed or have to deal with a lot of court problems, arrests, charges, legal fees, They don't want their rigs confiscated. They want it. They're taking a stand and they're doing everything they can. And what a valiant effort. And again, my hat goes off to them, but man, you can see what they're up against. And so what do? Like, protest, yeah. But our governments, our tyrannical governments, the ones that are in place right now, I don't think they care. They'll let you protest, but they're just not going to listen to you. It's very hard to get anybody to listen to you. And these guys have had some politicians listen to them, but they've been conservatives. Those are the ones like guys like Ted Cruz. And is he sincere or is he just a political opportunist? Who knows? Will it make a difference? I don't know. You know, their voice is being heard by some. I think in that regard, they seem to be making more headway than the Canadian truckers did, because they actually have been able to engage in meetings, and right, and they haven't had people charged and hauled away and all of that stuff. But on the other side, the Canadian Freedom Convoy, because it was somewhat disruptive, I would argue that it was lawful, with maybe minor traffic violations or
bylaw infractions.
Right, bylaw infractions, yes, maybe. But overall, I would say it was a lawful protest.
Yeah.
Regardless of how the media and the government is portraying it. But I would say it was successful because it was, I think, the reason for the removal of many of these mandates, because the government could see that people were tired of a lot of this stuff and weren't prepared to let it continue much longer, and that people wanted these things to come to an end. And so I think they've given us a little bit of a break, and I think that break came earlier than it would have because of the truckers, and I think they achieved quite a few things that have not been
huge,
that they haven't received credit for.
Exactly. But I was thinking about this the other day, and I kind of feel that how fearful the Liberal Party is of all the actions that happened in Ottawa. I think that's kind of a good thing at the end of the day, because it shows how successful it was. And that it also, another little victory out of the Canadian protests was it removed the mask off of the politicians, and it showed their disdain for the people. All for the world to see.
Ms. Jensky says, Rick Walker, I don't know about Ted Cruz, but Ron Johnson is definitely sincere. Yeah, I have no idea. I don't know. I hope so. I hope that what they've been doing bears fruit. My concern is, the Canadian Freedom Convoy, they had some vulnerabilities. They were sitting still, not making money. It was really cold. They had to have fuel brought in so the guys could keep warm. And then, the government used military wartime tactics against them to break that thing up.
Grassroots, man.
Not just, I'm not just talking about the violence at the end. They used economic sanctions. If you look at what they did, they really did declare war on those truckers, and they used warfare style tactics to attack them, right down to freezing bank accounts, just like they are doing with Russia, right? Sanctions, freeze accounts of oligarchs, try to prevent them from trading internationally. All these things, same stuff they did to the truckers. Exactly the same kind of stuff.
And Justin Trudeau is treated around the world almost the same as Vladimir Putin.
Hadn't thought of it in that way, but yeah, he's not very popular.
His mask has been ripped from his face. They know who he is. And the one guy compared him to Chatham-Sarnia. And again, for those of you who don't know, Nicolae Chatham-Sarnia was the communist dictator for Romania, and they had a revolution in 1989, and him and his wife were both executed after a short little trial thereafter. But this guy has basically been the killer of plenty of political dissidents. And the certain members of the European Union are saying Trudeau is just like Ceausescu.
Well, in fact, this guy says Ted Cruz wants to be president of the U.S. He may do anything to get there. And Ted Cruz was talking about Justin Trudeau just a couple of days ago. In fact, let's bring that up and we can listen to what Ted Cruz had to say.
Oh, that's a good point.
About that very thing. Here he is, the man himself, Mr. Ted Cruz, who is actually not that far away from the presidency. He did run against Donald Trump for the in the Republican primary. Anyway,
here we go. An existential moment for our nation. The threats in our country have never been greater. So I want to do something a little bit unusual for CPAC. I want to step back and go a little more philosophical and ask, what is this battle all about? What are we fighting about in this nation? And I'm going to suggest that the fundamental conflict that is playing out across this great nation is a battle between power and liberty. The two are in fundamental conflict. We are seeing it every day. Vaccine mandates versus doctors and nurses. Mask mandates versus kids in school. Spotify versus Joe Rogan. GoFundMe versus Canadian truckers. Justin Trudeau pause for a second and observe that is the first time in recorded history that any Canadian has ever elicited that much of a response from any crowd on planet Earth.
The Canadian truckers are standing up for freedom. I think it is powerful to watch. It is an incredible groundswell. It's an organic groundswell from the people. And I think the Canadian truckers are standing up not just for the freedom of Canadians, but for the freedom of Americans. This COVID pandemic, we have seen petty authoritarians willing to impose mandates that they have no right to impose, lawless mandates. Joe Biden has done so. Democratic governors have done so. Democratic mayors have done so. The government of Canada has done so. When it comes to vaccines, look, I'm pro-vaccine. I've been vaccinated. But I also believe in individual liberty. It's your choice whether or not to choose to get a COVID vaccine. And you shouldn't have some petty tyrant forcing you to make that choice. It's your choice whether your 5-year-old children should get a vaccine. It shouldn't be some Democratic politician saying we're going to force your 5-year-old to get a COVID vaccine. People are fed up with the dishonesty. They're fed up with the hypocrisy.
Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome. I think one of the worst legacies of the Obama presidency was the politicization of the Department of Justice during the 8 years of the Obama-Biden presidency. The Department of Justice has a long history of being apolitical, of exercising fidelity to law, of not being used as a partisan weapon to target the enemies of whichever administration is in power. The Obama-Biden administration corrupted that process, and we are still dealing with the consequences. I believe appointees to the Department of Justice should have a demonstrated record of fidelity to law and impartiality, an ability to defend the rule of law. Ms. Gupta, as I look at your record is one of an extreme partisan advocate. Your record is an ideologue.
So we're seeing the use of lawfare not just in the U.S., but also they're using lawfare in Canada. We see it against Randy Hillier. We're seeing it against Jeremy McKenzie. We're seeing it against pastors. We're seeing it against even media outlets, independent media outlets, right? So that's what these truckers with the People's Convoy are up against. They know that they have to be careful, and they're looking for constructive, creative ways to facilitate change in a positive way. And I get it.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a fine line, right? Because if you're too safe at the same time,
where's your leverage, right? Where's your bargaining chip? So, the problem here, they're going to head back across the country. Okay, so they're driving and burning up fuel. And how long can this go on? I don't know. I just don't know. It's like I've said before. I view it's sort of like a strike.
Yeah.
Right? A labor dispute. And if you strike at a factory, you pick it outside the factory so that you shut down production. But if you can't do that, where's your leverage? You're just advertising at that point and trying to build public support. So your convoy becomes a mobile advertising campaign, right? A public relations campaign. How effective can that be? I don't know. I think it depends on how upset people are, how concerned. You see what I'm saying? Like, I think you get it.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
But look, there's a risk factor that is almost. There's a risk factor that is always in a successful equation, and that there's always a certain amount of risk that you have to take in order for things to be successful. But look, I'll be straightforward. I don't think going to California is a good idea. I think California is dead to America. I think California is going to, like, if they wanted to, like, leave the United States forever, I would probably think that a lot of the United States would be pretty happy about it.
I would say I think this depends on how they do this. If they're going to drive across the country and go, and then strategically stop in certain places and do certain things to raise awareness, to maybe protest, and do it in effective ways that can be legal, but still in some way disruptive so that they put pressure on. I mean, I have to leave that up to them. I don't know, and I'm not telling anybody what to do. But maybe by being a convoy and actually driving and being a convoy and taking it from town to town, city to city, and making stops at maybe different state capitals along the way to show their support for others who they've been calling on other people to have demonstrations outside state capitals. Maybe they can make a difference that way. I'm just concerned because for 2 years we've seen people having protests, in some cases really big protests in big cities. We've seen them in Toronto and in Ottawa, of course. But I'm not talking even about truckers' convoys, but I'm talking about just people having protests, people just marching down the streets. Right now in Calgary, we see protests every weekend, and the cops are responding by getting injunctions, and they're becoming increasingly violent toward the protesters as the weeks go on, because the police chief there is now describing them as anti-democracy protesters. That's how he describes the freedom protesters. But as the people are marching around with their Bristol board signs and their Canadian flags and U.S. flags, I think it's just kind of going up into the atmosphere, and then they all go home at the end of the Saturday or Sunday protest, and they're forgotten about again until the next week. If the politicians were paying any attention to them on the weekends at all, it's kind of like I think the politicians are willing to let them blow off the steam, and so they can just ignore them. And especially in Canada, it's pretty clear that Justin Trudeau and Doug Ford and Scott, Jason Kenney in Alberta, and the premier in British Columbia, these guys aren't paying any attention to these people. They have contempt for them. So it's like, go ahead, spout off all you want. Just don't blockade anything. Don't make too much noise. In Calgary, they're not even allowed to use amplification systems for speeches anymore. They can't block any roads. They can't block sidewalks. They have to keep moving. They have to go over here. They can't go in this park. It's just, and then every week the restrictions become even harder. In London, Ontario, in Canada, the cops blocked off roads to prevent people from even going down into the downtown area the one weekend. So I just don't know, man. It's kind of like I said the other night, remain peaceful, remain lawful, but I think new creative things are needed in order to get some leverage of some kind, because I don't think these protests alone are enough. It's just not enough for these things to make enough of a difference.
Yeah. Well, there will be adaptation. There always is.
It's not just that, too. It's like these people are paying a heavy price. These truckers are suffering, right?
Yeah.
Some of these guys have sold off their, they cashed in their 401ks.
Mm-hmm.
So they're burning up their money to do this. And now they're heading back across the country, burning up more fuel, not making any money. So, and a lot of the guys have been kind of cycling in and out, going back to work for a while and then coming back and joining the demonstration again. But
it might be for their benefit to travel around a little bit. So you're right about that. But I think California is the lost cause. I think that they will be the enemy of the people and of the government in California.
Lisa Jamie Lynn says the government letting people protest could be about giving people the illusion that they're able to do something to make a difference. But at the end of the day, they know they're getting nowhere and that they're still going to do whatever the heck they want anyway. Just a thought. Yeah. I think the government is, generally it's okay. They're okay with people having a little protest and then going home. And we've heard them say that. That's the way democracy works. You come out and you protest with your signs, and then we get to ignore you. Chrissy Nicole says, nope, it's been happening for 2 years. Mark C says, Mike H, Canadian complacency is a disease. Yes. Mason Free Party says, I'm using music flags and truth newspapers. Yeah. Jorge Rain says, for sure, Justin Marie, we're just seeing corruption all over the place these days. I missed something there. Ninth Citizen says, if the culture no longer values freedom, then freedom is dead. Raylex says, it's not getting their attention. If it is, they're just ignoring it because they don't care. I don't think the politicians care. I think they've got a bigger agenda, and they're rolling it all out, and they're going to implement this thing come heck or high water. And they're already doing it. They've done it. They wanted everybody vaxxed up, and they pretty much got that, because we're at 80, 90% in Canada. Pretty much. So there's only 10, 15% of the population left that isn't. I don't know what more they want.
I don't know what more they want either. One world government.
Oh, is that what it is? Right.
Yeah.
Oh, just that. Yeah. Well, it's a good thing the World Economic Forum has been involved in developing our digital ID system federally, right?
Thank goodness.
That's great.
Perfect. I go to bed at night and I sleep like a baby knowing that they're working on that. Yes, absolutely. So I did want to follow up with this one story. I believe you thought that I was a little bit too mean about this guy. So I thought it was worthy of following up on. We all remember this guy. So CBC's regretful trucker convoy protester story falls apart. So this is a guy, he says he lives in his SUV. A story hyped by the CBC and CTV about regretful trucker convoy protester is being disputed by those who were on the ground with him in Ottawa and those who have been victims of his previous alleged scams. Published Thursday, the story focuses on Martin Joseph Engelhart, a man claiming to have given away all of his life savings to the truckers and now regrets his involvement in the Freedom Convoy. Salivating at the idea of gullible right-wing, at the idea of a gullible right-wing mascot, CBC seemingly ran this story to project the narrative that the Freedom Convoy took advantage of this well-meaning man and that he is now regretful for taking part in the protest. However, new evidence suggests CBC ran the story without conducting the most basic level of investigation. In addition to CBC, CTV also ran a story about Engelhart where he says he is sorry to the people of Ottawa, noting they had to endure all the horns and all the weirdos. Engelhart says he never really had a stance on mandates, but allegedly gave all of his life savings anyhow. This was believable enough to legacy media, and nonetheless...
Don't we have that clip? Can't we just run the clip to show people again?
What, the mainstream media clip?
Yeah, the story that ran on CBC. We had it yesterday.
Well, we're almost done.
Okay, go ahead.
Unless you want to run that, and then we can get into.
I'd like to, if you still have the clip. I don't know if it's been taken down.
No, it hasn't been taken down.
Let's run it because let's do that, and then I've got the clip of this social media guy who says that he got scammed by the guy. So we can run the two back to back.
It's in the same article.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. So okay. Give me a moment here.
Sure.
I'll find him. It wasn't that long ago. Oh, here we go. Just one moment.
I think that's it.
All right.
There it is.
I'm ready.
So do you have something?
No, I have.
I've got the original. Did you want me to bring that back up?
No, I have the original.
Oh, do you? Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Let me know when you're ready.
I'm all set.
Okay.
And there is regret from at least one protester who joined the Freedom Convoy.
He's now homeless and has lost his life savings. The leaders of the convoy refusing to help him. CTV's Natalie Van Roy has been following that story for us tonight. Natalie.
Graham, the protester that CTV News spoke to this afternoon, says he spent all of his life savings on helping people with the convoy
and CTV
and is now living out of his vehicle. He only joined because he wanted to feel part of something after months of being lonely.
I'm still as alone as I was 2 months ago. I still don't have friends. I still don't have family. I'm living in the back of a freaking car. So, yeah, I regret going.
Martin Joseph Engelhart says he is broke after joining the Freedom Convoy and traveling from Medicine Hat, Alberta to Ottawa in January.
It was over $13,000.
That was his entire life savings. While not passionate about the cause, he says he joined the convoy to feel part of something. He was also upset about not being able to say goodbye to his friend who was dying of cancer because of COVID-19 restrictions.
Loneliness and was actually one of the worst things for me because there was nowhere for me to go.
After arriving in the nation's capital, he wanted to help and quickly got involved in transferring thousands of dollars in cash for occupiers, as well as purchasing food and fuel.
They were like, oh, we need gas and we need to get the truck running. And, oh, Martin, can you go with this guy to the gas station, fill some tanks? And I'm like, sure. And keep your receipt.
Engelhart was hopeful he would be reimbursed from crowdsourcing platforms, but that never happened. Text messages provided by the 41-year-old show some of the exchanges where he writes, "Appreciate it. I emptied my PayPal. I should have more money coming in. I spent almost all my savings. Then the worry, as he wrote, I put in all my savings so far, just worried.
I got arrested for delivering fuel with my minivan, and I was giving a piece of paper that was that says I have to be outside of Ottawa in the radius of 100 kilometers.
Engelhart says he wants to apologize to the residents of Ottawa for his involvement.
I'm sorry to the people of Ottawa, downtown core and everything you had to enter, all the Oran and all the weirdos.
As he tries to piece his life back together with his bank account remaining frozen.
Engelhart isn't allowed to be anywhere near Ottawa because of the conditions linked to his arrest. He says his vehicle is also still impounded, but he can't afford to get it back. Patricia.
He's Natalie Van Roy live for us.
So
that
is not the whole story.
So, no, I mean, and I ripped on him pretty heavily, and you were like, well, I mean, he's probably not play with a full deck.
Yeah, well, I thought, you know what? I thought he's got to have a developmental disability. That's what I thought.
Nah, this guy is a manipulator. And here, bring up the story that I had there, because it's going to go into it just a little bit further.
Yeah.
And so it goes on to say, Engelhart's story is now being disputed by countless individuals who are with him, either in Ottawa or have been victims of his scams across the country, and many aspects of CBC's piece are self-evidently suspicious, but most were pointed out by Fox News producer Greg Ree, who created a Twitter thread of all the falsehoods, and it says, update, have now obtained records of Engelhart's wire transfers. It appears CBC did not bother to check whether Engelhart was sending his money or request withdrawal receipts. They simply assured it was going to accounts Engelhart did not control. CBC is promising a response today. The bank documents also show this individual is receiving welfare payments from multiple provinces at once. I have asked CBC if they inquired as to why this may be. And so, not only that, there's a video in here where this guy here, particularly,
I've got that queued up here, full screen, so I can even run it on this side if you want.
Yeah, just play it.
Sure, let me just, I got to find the right tab. There it is, and bring it up over here. So this is a guy who runs, I think it's called In the Shed. He's a podcaster, and he was down there in Ottawa, and this is his message to Mr. Engelhart.
Martin Joseph Engelhart, if you're watching, you'll remember me and the time that came out to Coventry to pick up some supplies, and you were hanging around, still one of the only people awake, and so I asked for a lift in your minivan over to Walmart. That's when you told me your story, and you didn't ask me for assistance, but you told me the situation you were in and living in your van. And so I decided then, having just met you an hour before, to e-transfer you $1,000 so that you could get a hotel for multiple nights. I don't share that to brag, but to share the truth of what happened. Martin, we stayed in touch, and I remember when you called me at when the Coventry base was being raided. I got out there to make sure you were okay. I tried as best I could with the various responsibilities that I had to watch out for you and everyone else I was in touch with. I found out later that many people sent you money after you sold your story to the CBC and the CTV. I looked around and saw that so many people were talking about the money that they contributed to you, the ways they tried to help you. People, I was texting with some friends from Coventry, and they told me how they worked very hard to give you everything you needed and to take care of you. I don't know what was a scam. I don't know what was mistakes, and I'm not here to figure that out. I'll leave that to others to do the full research and to figure out exactly what you were doing and what happened. But I'm confident that the story that you told to the CBC and the CTV and others is not true. I'm confident that many people, myself included, did our best to help you and to care for you. I think it's important for you to know, Martin, that even after your story went out there criticizing the convoy, that any of the people I've talked to don't wish ill upon you, but wish you help. Not financial help. I'm not convinced that's what you need, but I do think you need help and support. And I don't know what you're going through and the truth of exactly what you've gone through in the past. But I do want you to get help, and I wish no ill upon you, Martin. I wouldn't even be sharing this if it wasn't for the public nature in which you shared your story and spoke out against many good people that I consider friends. And again, it's beyond the scope of my work to dig to all the bottom of this, but I am confident the full truth will come out, and I am confident enough to come on here and say that, Martin, what you told the CBC and the CTV is not the full truth, and there's more going on, and that you did receive a lot of support from many people. I'm worried that you're taking advantage of the situation still and collecting money. There seems to be evidence of that. But mostly, I'm disappointed with our mainstream media, who did no research, made no phone calls, did no journalism whatsoever, and instead are taking advantage of you, Martin, and your story to push their own narrative. And that's what's the most disturbing to me, that a multi-billion-dollar state broadcaster cannot get to the bottom of the story that a little YouTuber with a few text messages can get to the bottom of. So I'm not here to condemn you, Martin. I'm here to condemn our mainstream media, and it's taking advantage of you. And I'm here to call for them to do the journalism, and when they get to the bottom of it, which will not be hard to do, to retract that false story and to admit that me and many others, the community at the Convoy, tried to care for Martin. And if he is honest with you, he will tell you of all the people who handed him cash down on the street, the people who gave him food and supplies and offered him hotels at Coventry, the people who offered to pay for any tickets he might get, and the people in his past I've seen posting online who helped him in the past also tried to give him the help he needed. And there seems to be a pattern of taking advantage of people, and I'm sorry to see that. Again, Martin, I wish you all the best. I don't hold anything against you, and I want you to get the help you need. And to the CBC and CTV, please start doing some real journalism and some real research, so us YouTubers don't need to do it for you. Take care.
And I think that's right on point.
So it appears he has no real friends and that he's real lonely because he burns people.
Mm-hmm.
So he's manipulating a whole new crowd now. He's burned the Freedom Convoy, the Freedom Fighters. Now he's going to burn the pro-lockdown people.
What concerns me more is that CTV and CBC spun that up. And I knew that they were taking advantage of the situation, exploiting the story, because it was just another opportunity to smear the truckers, right?
Yep.
But what really concerns me is that even me, someone who is aware of how off track they are these days, even I believed that they would have at least done the groundwork, the rudimentary journalism necessary to determine that the guy was credible. Because whenever I was working in the field, when I was out in the community, you would get to know your contacts. And whenever I would come into contact with someone to do a story on them, I'd size them up. Is this person real? Are they credible? Can I believe what they're saying? Are they being truthful? What's the evidence? And they showed the text messages, and that seemed to be some sort of verification. So to me, it seemed like they'd done the proper work, but obviously they didn't. And if they did, they ignored it because it was an opportunity for them to roll this guy out as somebody who had been burned by the convoy, when in reality it was the other way around. And worse than that, he's maybe doing more. Now, all of that being said, we have to be careful here because these are all allegations. No charges with regard to some of these allegations have been laid. We don't know how truthful any of this is. So we don't want to suggest that this guy has done anything illegal or improper without saying that these are all just allegations at this point. So who knows where it's all going, but I think it's pretty clear what's happened. Right?
Yeah, it's pretty clear. I don't know. Let me just say this, and it's not to dig us into any trouble, so to speak, but that story smelled bad from the beginning, eh? Like, it stunk. Yeah.
Well, that's why I thought this guy, for him to be in that position, he has to have a developmental disability. He's making bad decisions. He's really not capable of protecting himself. But in reality, it's the opposite. The guy has full capacity and portrays himself in a particular way to get sympathy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and then went so far as to try to manipulate the media, and they saw the opportunity from someone who was trying to manipulate them to get what he wanted. And then it was like, oh, well, isn't this convenient for both of us? He can manipulate us and get what he wants, and we'll manipulate him so we get what we want. So we can, it's just bad news all the way around.
Well, it looks to me like he's going to walk out of this one with no friends now, and that's on Twitter forever now. And that's the guy who posted that, Gregory. He's
and hats off to that Dave guy for posting that, and hats off to the guy, the producer from Fox News, for
Gregory.
Yeah, for posting all of that information and setting the record straight. That's the right thing to do, I think.
Yeah, they have done the right thing, and this will follow that Steve guy forever. Long time. And
Helena Benman says Pat King has been forgotten. He's still in jail. He was the first trucker I saw going to Ottawa. Yeah. Interesting, isn't it? How he wasn't even one of the main organizers, that guy. He wasn't. He's just an easy target because he was a social media guy and did some things that had some profile. So they were able to go after him. And yeah, I guess he's still in jail. Pat King. Boy, oh boy, what has the country come to? And when, I don't know, man, information, it's all about information, narratives, politics, public opinion. They're all competing for the public's support, right? Trying to convince the people of something. They're out there trying to sell you on these ideas. Wow. Canada is just, it's gone. Yeah, what about BJ? Where is that guy?
Oh, he came out. He's in Florida.
Yeah.
I can't remember where he did an interview on.
Yeah, so I don't know. I believe there are people that simply want to keep Pat silenced more so than anything else. Yeah, but you know, he wasn't even like the main guy. He was out there doing his thing, and
It's complicated.
it is.
Wow.
Well, we were watching. I mean, like he wasn't even involved in like some of the main meetings and things like that, but he was out there in his truck driving around, and he was like sort of on the front lines, trying to be the front lines guy, and I don't know. And then they've just gone after him. But like I say, that story with the CBC and CTV, that's just another example of what's going on with regard to information warfare. It was an opportunity for them to smear the truckers. And then this guy, it looks like he might have been manipulating them so that he'd get more sympathy to get people to give him money with a sob story. And you notice the words that he chose were very carefully chosen if you really listen to it again, where he's like picking particular phrases. He called the what did he call them? The crazies or whatever it was?
Weirdos.
The weirdos. See, now I'm on your side. So you should feel sorry for me because I'm on your side now. Because they're all a bunch of weirdos, those people that took advantage of me. Yeah. Information warfare. That's what it is.
And you can help us fight the information warfare.
Yeah, by liking, subscribing, sharing, ringing the notification bell.
Sharing.
Yeah.
Share it around. Or you could, if you would be so inclined to, if you would like to donate to our little operation here, it'd be really appreciative. You can go to freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. There is a hot link in the description to this video below. You could also click that. We definitely do appreciate your support and your help, very much so. So definitely we are looking forward to bringing you more great content, and absolutely love what everybody's been hanging out with us so far. We greatly appreciate all the support and all the help.
Yeah. And again, hats off to the other independent journalists out there, like that Dave fellow from that podcaster who was right, I think, to set the record straight, and to the Fox News producer. And tomorrow night, we have a freedom fighter from Alberta, a couple of them that will be on the show. Our audience in the province of Alberta, Canada, is growing, and they're having protests, demonstrations out there regularly. Convoys are ongoing. And in Calgary, you know, we've seen large protests every weekend. But we're going to have an interview tomorrow night with a freedom fighter who went to Ottawa and then went back to Alberta, to Red Deer. And it was a great experience for him. Totally different kind of story. His car is all covered in signatures, and he's going to tell us what's going on out in Red Deer now and out in Alberta and bring us up to date. And we have another person who's going to accompany him, I think, on that interview as well. Another freedom fighter from Alberta. So we're looking forward to that tomorrow night. And we'll be talking about the Freedom Convoy, truckers, Canadian truckers. And we'll try to find out more about what's happening with the People's Convoy as they begin their journey back across the U.S. to California now. And, you know, I'm worried that it might not be entirely productive, but on the other hand, it might just be the best thing. Might be a really good thing, actually, the more I think about it, if they're making stops in all these cities and building support in having a real convoying across the USA and picking up support as they go along all the way and making stops in all these different cities and towns. Yeah, it could be a good thing, Brenden. You never know. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt on this one, regardless of whether I salute them all for fighting for freedom and doing everything that they possibly can and being smart about it. I think that's really important these days. We've had too many people suffer and too many sacrifices made. And I'm all for fighting, but I think we need to be smart about this and minimize the damage to the people that are out there fighting. I don't like seeing people go to jail and face charges and suffer financial consequences, right? It's not a good thing. We need to find ways to fight, but
they are all welcome to Maverick News whenever they so wish to join us, any evening, anytime.
Yes.
We'll be here for them. And yes, we salute them 100%. And you know what? It might kind of makes me feel better knowing that there's a very large amount of diesel guzzling automobiles going down to California. They're going to piss off some liberals. So, hey, there's some good things about that.
Ken R. is asking if we have an email address for e-transfers, and yes, we do. And I can put that up on the screen for you right here at maverickmultimedia@mail.com. That's maverickmultimedia@mail.com. I'll leave that up on the screen for a moment. We do accept e-transfers there. If you do send an e-transfer, please be sure to also let us know what the password is that you assign to the e-transfers so that the transaction can be completed. It does go into an actual business account so that we keep all the bookkeeping proper and everything. All the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. And the bank requires a password. So please make sure that you do that so that we can keep everything straight and we can complete everything. So maverickmultimedia@mail.com. Or also you can go to the donation page at freedomreporters.com. And that does actually go into a PayPal, but we transfer the funds out as soon as possible on a regular basis so that nothing can be seized there at any time. So we do clear that out to make sure that the funds are kept safe and sound. And again, there's the email address for e-transfers. And all that being said, we will be back here tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you, everyone. It was a great conversation tonight. A big thank you again to Rick Nicholls for being our special guest tonight. And we're looking forward to tomorrow night here on the Maverick News Channel. We are the Freedom Reporters, and I am Rick Walker, reminding you that we are the antivirus program for your mind.
And I am your trusty co-host, Brenden Kennedy. I will see you tomorrow. COVID and all.
And catch you on the flip side. Thanks again.